My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 The Pilgrim Being Chased. When you use the natives of the earth as a breeding ground for your people, you should have known that there would be no peace between us. Your way of reproduction is the enemy of the entire galaxy, Commander Davis said righteously. You don't know the benefits of artificial intelligence. If they are given enough time, they can sweep across the entire galaxy like locusts. Wherever they go, no grass will grow. All resources will become their mechanical army. The prophet's tone was a little angry. Oh? Wherever they go, no grass will grow. Then you can explain the following pictures. Commander Davis put several pictures in the terminal on the communicator. In the galaxy in the picture, there is only one lonely star left, and the original planets have disappeared. These planets won't grow legs by themselves. Commander Davis looked at the prophet in the communicator with a mocking face. The prophet was speechless and silently hung up the communication. While the two were talking, the Davis fleet had already reached the range of the Pilgrim civilization fleet, and countless white beams shot out from the Pilgrim fleet battleships. 2 ancient civilization battleships and 6 ancient civilization cruisers immediately rushed to the front of Davis' fleet, and used their hulls to receive all the beams fired at the fleet. The dazzling light generated by the gathering of thousands of light beams illuminated the entire battlefield. The ancient civilization warships shrouded by the light beams did not know what was happening. How is the shield of the ancient civilization warship? The commander of the Davis fleet hurriedly asked the officer beside him. The shield consumption of the ancient civilization warship is 59.3%, which is within our calculation range. The officer turned to the commander and said, "Very good, all the warships will cover the shooting and let the ancient civilization warships break into the enemy's front." The commander touched his golden beard with some pride. When the light faded, the intact ancient civilization warships rushed out of the Davis fleet's array and rushed towards the Pilgrim fleet. The Davis warships also launched their attack wings and fired golden beam cannons at the Pilgrim fleet. However, due to the further evolution of the armor of the Pilgrim warships, their defense capabilities have been greatly improved. In addition, they are beyond the effective range of the Davis warships. This time, the salvo of the Davis fleet did not play any role. The Pilgrim fleet easily resisted a round of salvos from the Davis fleet. The Pilgrim civilization fleet, which survived a round of salvos, was immediately in high spirits. The beam cannons on each warship aimed at the approaching ancient civilization warships and fired frantically. The ancient civilization warships have 32.1% of their shields remaining. The shields have 30.2% remaining. The shields have 26.7% remaining. It has entered the range of our weapons. All weapons open fire. With the command of the flagship, the bows of the ancient civilization warships open one after another, and red light flashed inside. Not good. All warships retreat. After the prophet found that the salvos could not stop the enemy warships from approaching, he decisively ordered the warships on the front line to retreat. But it was too late. Countless metal balls flashed red light and flew towards the Pilgrim battleships in the front row. When these metal balls approached the enemy ships, they ejected the metal blades in their bodies and began to spin rapidly. The shields and armor of the Pilgrim battleships were instantly cut open by the metal blades like tofu. After seeing that the 10 battleships in the front row had been shot into their bodies by the balls, the prophet knew that these 10 battleships could not be saved, but he still had a chance to save the rest of the battleships. 10 battleships self-destruct. The remaining battleships shoot and retreat. Following the prophet's order, the 10 Pilgrim battleships that were invaded by the balls suddenly exploded, and white light instantly filled the starry sky. The prophet stared at the white light of the battleship explosion nervously, but to his disappointment, hundreds of balls flew out of the self-destructing flames intact and continued to fly towards the retreating Pilgrim battleships. All battleships, aim at the first enemy battleship and concentrate your fire. The prophet had no choice but to adopt the strategy of destroying them one by one and order the battleships to focus their fire first. Anyway, the enemy only had 2 weird battleships and 6 cruisers, so we could kill as many as we could. As long as we killed these weird battleships, the others would be no problem. Hundreds of white beams shot towards the ancient civilization battleship that was at the forefront. Not good. The shield loss of the number 01 ancient civilization battleship has exceeded the warning value. Before the soldier in the bridge of the Davis Fleet flagship finished speaking, the shield of the leading battleship was shattered by the concentrated fire beams. The hard battleship hull lasted only a few seconds before it was melted through. After a violent explosion, the ancient civilization battleship turned into a sky full of golden light and dissipated in the universe. Among the metal balls that were originally rushing towards the Pilgrim fleet, 100 metal balls suddenly stopped flying and turned into dots of golden light and disappeared in the starry sky. Damn it! Let the other ancient civilization warships retreat immediately. The commander of the Davis fleet was shocked to see that an ancient civilization battleship had been lost. He did not expect that the enemy would discover the weakness of this fleet so quickly. That is, the number of ancient civilization warships that posed a threat to the Pilgrims was too small. Now that one ship has been lost, there are only 5 left. The situation is not optimistic. The remaining ancient civilization warships hurriedly retreated, and the metal ball that was originally flying towards the Pilgrim civilization also flew back to the warship. All warships wrap up the ancient civilization warships. If the enemy fires in unison, use your ship to block it, Commander Davis gritted his teeth and said. The ordinary warships in the Davis fleet rushed forward to meet the ancient civilization warships, and the warships stacked up to protect the ancient civilization warships in the middle. Approach at full speed. The Davis fleet, like a huge sphere, rushed towards the Pilgrim fleet while firing. The Prophet, who was shocked by the crazy tactics of the Davis fleet, never thought that the other party would disregard the lives of his people and use them as a shield. This desperate tactic made it impossible for the salvos of the Pilgrim's warships to hit the ancient civilization warships under layers of protection. Whenever several Davis battleships were destroyed, new ones would come to fill in. Beam weapons have weak penetration. At this time, the Davis fleet had once again entered the range of the ancient civilization warships, and hundreds of spheres were once again shot out from the ancient civilization warships. Realizing that the situation was not good, the Prophet turned around and ran with the fleet. In this situation, it was not a good idea to fight hard. However, the Davis fleet would not let them run away. Hundreds of spheres rotated and crashed into the battleships behind the Pilgrim fleet. Soon, these battleships suddenly exploded from the inside, and the huge fragments flying everywhere blocked the entire battlefield. Chapter 252, Rushing into the Black Hole. Damn it! We will go back after we get rid of the artificial intelligence. Why are you chasing us so closely? The Prophet gnashed his teeth while standing in the hull of the Void Mothership. Make an emergency jump, the Prophet ordered the High Priest beside him. The gravity well of the black hole affects us, and our warship cannot open the hyperspace. The High Priest shook his head bitterly. The Prophet frowned when he heard this. He didn't want to die here like this. If his colleagues knew about it, they would laugh at him for hundreds of thousands of years. Suddenly, the Prophet's eyes fell on the black hole that was constantly flashing on the holographic screen. Rush into the black hole at full speed, the Prophet gritted his teeth and ordered the High Priests. His lifespan of hundreds of thousands of years made him know the nature of many phenomena in the universe, including the powerful gravity of the black hole that distorted the space. As long as his warship can survive the huge tearing force of the black hole, it can jump into the space crack after entering the black hole. Although he didn't know what the final outcome would be, it was definitely better than dying here. Damn Davis Council. I will be back. After receiving this communication, the commander of the Davis fleet watched the Pilgrim Void Mothership rushing into the black hole with a group of battleships and cruisers. Seeing that the Pilgrim fleet rushed into the unknown black hole on its own, the Davis fleet stopped chasing and let nature help them deal with this hateful enemy. They would not go in to die. At this time, after the Pilgrim fleet entered the gravity range of the black hole, the shields of each warship began to flash wildly, and countless substances absorbed by the black hole hit the shields of the warships. If this goes on, we will all be sucked to pieces by the black hole. We can only make some sacrifices. The Prophet frowned and thought secretly when he felt the shield protection was rapidly declining. All battleships enter the body of the Void Mothership and connect the shields in parallel. The Prophet ordered a group of High Priests. But Lord Prophet, our Void Mothership can only accommodate 30 battleships. A High Priest was a little reluctant. These are all the main forces of their race. Execute immediately. The Prophet looked at the High Priest coldly and closed his eyes. The High Priests could only helplessly select 30 ships from the battleship formation to fly back to the Void Mothership, while the other battleships and cruisers were ruthlessly abandoned in the gravity vortex of the black hole. The battleships that flew into the Void Mothership merged with the Void Mothership one after another. and the light blue shields extended from the battleships to the Void Mothership. Shield connection completed. The Void Mothership shield is enhanced by 200%. The High Priest glanced at the many warships outside the mothership with some reluctance. As the Pilgrim fleet got closer and closer to the black hole, the various material energies attracted by the black hole hit the battleship shields more and more densely. After a while, the shield of a Pilgrim cruiser began to break first, and soon dissipated in the air, and the Pilgrim cruiser, which lost the protection of the shield, was torn apart by the flying energy. Then the shields of the remaining Pilgrim cruisers were also broken, and together with the cruisers, they became part of the flying matter. Lord Prophet, we are about to pass through the outer horizon of the black hole and enter the energy layer. If we break through the energy layer and enter the one-way membrane area, we can't turn back. A high priest looked at the madly flashing holographic screen in front of him and said to the first no. Continue. The prophet closed his eyes and said coldly with an expressionless face. With a violent vibration, the Void Mothership seemed to break through a membrane and came to a ring area full of dense energy. These dense energies continued to rotate into the black hole. The many battleships following the Void Mothership did not survive this time. When they passed through the membrane that distinguished the area, they were torn apart by the energy in the energy layer. Lord Prophet, our mothership shield is rapidly decreasing. The energy flow in the energy layer is too dense, which is very harmful to our shield. We may not be able to rush into the one-way membrane area. The High Priest looked at the rapidly decreasing shield value and felt a little desperate. The prophet opened his eyes upon hearing this and looked at the High Priests surrounding him. Then use your lives to protect the safety of the mothership. The prophet raised his hands high. Energy streams shot out from the hearts of the High Priests surrounding him, and gathered above the prophet's hands to form a circling energy ball. After a few seconds, the energy ball seemed to be full of energy, and it ejected an energy beam toward the ceiling of the hall, where the prophet's ship was when he descended. As the energy beam continued to rush into the prophet's ship, a layer of deep blue light film spread from the prophet's ship to the entire Void Mothership. As the light film spread, the figures of many high priests became more and more transparent, and soon all the high priests disappeared into the air with unbelievable eyes. At this time, the Void Mothership wrapped in the light film had successfully passed the energy layer and arrived at the one-way membrane area. The energy that was originally spinning wildly had disappeared, and the entire one-way membrane area was filled with white light, as calm as a pool of dead water. Is this the one-way membrane area of the black hole? So incredible, the prophet, who had just sacrificed his life and was extremely weak, muttered to himself as he looked at the white world around the mothership. Although he had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, he had only heard about the internal space of the black hole from his colleagues and had never seen it with his own eyes. He did not expect that there was light here. With a wave of the prophet's hand, several newly synthesized high priests emerged from the ground and came to the mothership control console. Let's keep moving forward, the prophet ordered the newly appeared high priest. The high priest who received the order controlled the Void Mothership to fly forward slowly. The blue light generated by the mothership's thrusters was so dazzling in the pure white space. My Lord Prophet, there is nothing here. We can't find any landmarks in front of us. The high priest looked at the blank radar display and was a little puzzled. Keep moving forward, the prophet frowned. They had no choice but to keep moving forward. They could only move forward in the one-way membrane area, not backward or move up, down, left, or right. The Void Mothership could not make any moves except to keep flying forward. 1,000 years had passed in the mothership, but it still seemed that the mothership had not reached the end. What he could see was still a blank world. Am I going to be trapped here? I can't accept this. The prophet felt that his body was aging slower and slower during the 1,000 years, and time seemed to have disappeared for him and the entire mothership. Although 1,000 years had passed, the various parts of the spaceship had not aged at all. Damn it, the prophet roared madly. Being sealed in this endless space and never aging was simply the most terrible punishment in the world. At this moment, the prophet suddenly felt something was wrong. What is this? The prophet looked at the halls around him and saw that all kinds of metals began to age rapidly, and soon turned into a pile of flying ash. He stretched his hands in front of him and found that his hands were also fading rapidly and would soon disappear. This situation would only occur if their race could not absorb souls and their bodies could not live forever. Chapter 253 Split. There is only one possibility. This space makes the time flow inside the Void Mothership start to speed up crazily. Tens of thousands of years may pass in 1 second. With the wailing of the prophet, He and the Void mothership disappeared in a white space. A few seconds later, a blue baby appeared in the space, and then the baby began to grow up, and a small spaceship appeared in the void from nothing. Then the small spaceship began to deform and become larger and larger, and some blue pilgrims appeared in the spaceship. As time passed, the original small spaceship turned into pilgrim mothership, and all kinds of blue figures appeared in their respective positions in the huge mothership. Then the mothership expanded again and turned into Void mothership, and the figure of the prophet appeared in the hull of the Void mothership. Is this my resurrection? The prophet raised his hands with a puzzled look and looked left and right. What's going on? Could it be that we were rescued by a civilization? Before the prophet finished speaking, he felt that time solidified again, and there was no trace of the passage of time on the spaceship. All items no longer age. This, the prophet had an ominous premonition. Sure enough, a moment later, the hull he was in began to weather rapidly again, and his body began to become transparent. Not long after, the entire Void mothership disappeared in the white world again. After an unknown amount of time, a blue baby appeared again in the white space, followed by a spaceship, a mothership, and a Void mothership. This is the rumored closed time-like line. The reappearing prophet looked at the white space in disbelief. If nothing unexpected happens, he is now very close to the strange ring, but he is now trapped in the cycle of time. Now he can only find a way to leave the time loop within an unknown period of time, otherwise he will be sealed here forever. Dividing line. Unlike the Pilgrim civilization trapped in the time loop, the Davis Security Council suddenly found that its biggest enemy was gone. The entire Security Council top management fell into confusion. Suddenly, there was no opponent, so what was the meaning of the warships they were frantically building and the territories they were constantly annexing? In the Council's capital Star Council Hall, there was a quarrel over the direction of the Council's future development. Since we have defeated this enemy, why don't we return the annexed planets to those low-level civilizations? The peace-loving director proposed to everyone. I disagree. We don't know when we will encounter such a civilization again. We should continue to expand and let our council continue to develop to deal with new threats. A director was unwilling to spit out the meat in his mouth, but fortunately found a reason to continue expanding the council. But the original intention of our council was to protect those civilizations that have not grown. What's the difference between what you do and those bandits? Another peace-loving director retorted. The council is stagnant because of your pedantic existence. It was almost destroyed by a new civilization. A director who supported the expansion of the council looked a little unfriendly. You, the director who advocated returning the planets and living in peace was so angry that his face turned black when he was pointed at his sore spot. In this case, let's let people make a choice. The chairman of the council, who didn't know how to stand, stood up and pushed the conflict to the citizens at the bottom. A few days later, a vote on whether to return the planet was launched among all Davis citizens. The final result of the vote was that the peace faction advocating the return of the planet won with a slight advantage of 51.339% support. This result made the directors who wanted to continue the expansion angry and left a meeting room in anger. 10 days later, half of the directors who left announced the establishment of the Davis Expansion Committee, breaking with the original Davis Security Council. Citizens and troops who supported continued expansion turned to the Davis Expansion Committee. The original Davis Security Council fleet was also divided into two factions and hostile to each other. Soon the two groups with different views broke completely and each occupied half of the star field. The huge Davis Security Council began to disintegrate from the inside and split into two huge forces. Among them, the Davis Security Council occupied 80% of the original star field, while the Davis Expansion Committee occupied the remaining 20% of the original star field and all the annexed star fields. Although from the star map, the star field of the Davis Security Council is smaller than that of the Davis Expansion Committee, the Davis Security Council has many more industrial facilities than the Expansion Committee. The advantage of the Davis Expansion Committee is that it occupies up to 80% of the warships of the original Security Council fleet. However, since the Security Council still owns the ancient civilization warships bought at a high price, neither side wants or dares to start a war, and thus fell into a strange silence. Citizens supporting both sides also began to take transport ships and passenger ships to carry out an extremely large moving operation. This moving operation means the complete division of the entire Davis Security Council. People with two different ideas gathered together, and in the end, the difference in ideas between the two sides will only become greater and greater. It can be foreseen that the possibility of the Davis Security Council and the Davis Expansion Committee merging again is very small. Without the interference of the peace-advocating directors, the Davis Expansion Committee showed its fangs to the surrounding civilizations. Although the Davis Security Council sent warning messages to those civilizations in advance, because the passage to these civilizations had been cut off by the Expansion Committee, the Davis Security Council was helpless against the invasion of the Expansion Committee. The Sith Empire, which is hundreds of light years away from the Davis star field, knew nothing about this. Because the distance was too far, and the detectors were destroyed by the Davis Security Council, the Empire was completely in the dark about the situation in the star field. However, the Empire did not care about this. The deep space probe left by the Empire on the way here discovered a huge fleet of corruptors heading towards the starting point galaxy. The number of this fleet of corruptors was as high as nearly 1 million, and the dark warships blocked the sun in the deep space probe lens. Compared with the 20 drone motherships, 130 battleships, 600 cruisers and 3,000 arsenal destroyers that the Empire now has, the fleet of corruptors is undoubtedly huge. What should we do? This fleet of corruptors is too large. Our fleet has too little chance of winning. Mingze bit the laser pen in his hand and frowned. Automatic release. The starting point may be delayed. Delay time Phuket Island. Chapter 254 Attack. Your Majesty, we still have the strength to fight with the defense modules in the orbits of the 4 planets. Tianyi waved his hand and summoned the holographic screen of the 4 planets. After the emergency construction of our construction department, the first phase of the orbital defense module has been completely completed, and all the weapons of the built modules have been replaced with mass acceleration cannons, because the locations of our 4 planets, Sith, New Home, New Way and Earth, are very close. As long as the enemy approaches our 4 planets, we can use the already perfect orbital defense facilities to fight them. Tianyi enlarged the 4 planets, revealing the hexagonal space station buildings that were constantly moving in orbit. But these 4 planets are orbiting around the star. Once they leave the ring world area we colonize, our colonies will be exposed to their guns. Mingze was a little worried. Your Majesty, look at this, Tianyi said as he mobilized the defense module on Nuwa to move to the side facing the ring world. What are you going to do? Mingze had a bad premonition. Before he finished speaking, countless shells were fired from the orbital module of Nuwa star towards the ring world. No, Mingze reached out to touch the holographic screen. However, the result was beyond his expectation. After countless shells were shot into the light film on the top of the ring world, they were quickly melted and decomposed and dissipated in the light film. This, Mingze looked at the disappearing shells in disbelief. That's right. After our experiments, this layer of light film can not only block the attack of physical weapons, but also achieve a 100% absorption rate for energy weapons. After all, such a huge superbuilding can exist in the universe for such a long time, its protection mechanism must be very perfect. This layer of light film can only pass the light for normal growth of organisms. Any object approaching at high speed will be decomposed by the light film. The only way to enter is to pass through it slowly. Tianyi nodded and explained. In other words, if the incubator's fleet arrives, if they don't fight a fleet decisive battle with us and want to attack our colony, they can only fight a ground war. Mingze slammed his fist. This is good news. You know, the Empire has never given up the development of ground weapons for so many years. If the group of corruptors want to attack the Empire's colonies, he will definitely let them know why the flowers are so red. Immediately start arranging the evacuation of citizens from the colonies of the ring world, and let the Marines, the Auxiliary Army, and the Orbital Airborne Army build defensive positions on the ring world. Mingze ordered Tianyi. Yes, sir. Tianyi's figure disappeared, and Mingze lay down on the chair weakly. Not long after, the people who had just moved to the colonies of the ring world brought their families and luggage to board the transport ships and passenger ships that came to meet them, and flew to the 3 administrative stars of the Empire. Not long after, the colonies were cleared, and all the people evacuated to Earth and the new home planet. After taking the citizens to the planet, the transport ships returned to Nuwa Star and transported the Auxiliary Army and the Orbital Airborne Army, which had been equipped with various equipment, to the ring world. Solid fortresses were built in the colonies of the ring world, and countless anti-aircraft guns were aimed at the sky. However, because the ring world is so huge, even if nearly 20 million troops were thrown on it, they would only occupy a tiny area. 30 days later, the last fortress was built on the ring world colony, and the various shipyards and scientific research facilities in the colony were evacuated. Countless troops stayed in various colonies and waited for the arrival of the Corruptor fleet. "Where is the Corruptor fleet now?" Li Mingze asked in the underground command center of the largest colony in the ring world, wearing power armor. "Your Majesty, the Corruptor fleet has jumped into hyperspace from our nearest galaxy and may soon reach the new starting point galaxy." Tianyi closed his eyes and connected to the detector in the nearby star system. Before she finished speaking, countless jump lightning flashes appeared on the periphery of the starting point galaxy. A huge fleet of nearly 1 million people appeared in the starting point galaxy. The huge black fleet brought unprecedented pressure to the people in front of the screen. At the beginning, because the Empire was not the main force in the battle with the Pilgrim civilization, the pressure was not very great, but this time it was the Sith Empire itself that faced this super fleet. Everyone instantly felt the atmosphere solidify, and the air seemed to be pressed by 1,000 pounds, making everyone breathless. "There are too many of them," an officer muttered to himself. "No matter how many there are, they are no match for us. Don't destroy morale." Li Mingze kicked the officer, and the officer was so scared that he dared not speak again. All the warships have gathered in front of the 4 planets, ready to fight the enemy at any time. Tianyi came behind Li Mingze. "Very good, let's see how these corruptors choose." Li Mingze pulled a chair and sat down without saying anything. The huge Corruptor fleet hesitated for a moment after jumping out of hyperspace, as if thinking about the next tactics, but it is also possible that they were shocked by the huge ring world. "Your Majesty, I detected hundreds of very strong scanning fluctuations. The Corruptor fleet seems to be using some kind of scanning device to scan the ring world." Tianyi frowned and said. But soon these Corruptor warships began to move, and as the thrusters suddenly ejected red light, the Corruptor fleet flew towards the 4 planets in the ring world. "Very good, their target is our main fleet. It seems that they want to have a decisive battle and defeat us at once." Li Mingze closed his eyes and cut off the connection with his body as he looked at the Corruptor warship approaching rapidly. After a while, another stand-in of Li Mingze sitting in the bridge of the flagship of the Imperial fleet opened his eyes. "All warships are ready to enter the overclocking mode." With Li Mingze's order, 10 cabins that looked like larger hibernation chambers popped up from the back half of the bridge. 10 singers who had been waiting for a long time walked into these 10 cabins. As the cabin hatches closed, the cabins lit up blue lights one after another. "Your Majesty, the overclocking room is ready and can be opened at any time." An officer looked at the screen in front of him and reported to Li Mingze. "Okay, conduct a salvo out of range first. Wait until the enemy ship approaches before turning on the overclocking mode." Li Mingze waved his hand. "Only more than 100 people have subscribed. Please support the genuine version, otherwise the author will not be able to continue writing with an income of 10 yuan a day." Chapter 255, The First Show of Power, for the love of a lifetime, but Flowers added a third update. The ships that received the order aimed at the approaching Corruptor fleet and fired a salvo, with countless shells blasting towards the Corruptor fleet. However, due to the long distance, the effect of this salvo was very limited. Although the Corruptor fleet, which was moving at high speed, was large in number and density, it still easily avoided 80% of the attacks. The remaining 20% of the attacks fell on the Corruptor warships, but only broke the shields of some warships, and did not even damage the armor of their warships. "Your Majesty, the Corruptors are starting to speed up." The officer turned back and reported to Li Mingze. "Launch a harassing attack before they reach the range, and use 1/3 of the orbital defense module to fire. Don't expose all our firepower in advance," Li Mingze ordered. The orbital defense module that received the new order opened 1/3 of the weapon's safety, aiming at the approaching Corruptor fleet and spraying anger. Faced with so many sudden attacks, the Corruptor fleet was a little confused and hurriedly moved the warships with damaged shields to the rear of the fleet. This time, because the number of shells was too dense, the Corruptor fleet only dodged 50% of the attacks. The remaining 50% tore apart a large number of warships' shields again, and several of them were seriously injured by the explosions that penetrated the armor. The seriously injured and shieldless Corruptor warships did not continue to follow the main force, but stayed in place to recover. After the recovery was completed, they would rejoin the battlefield. Anyway, the fleet of nearly 1 million people did not lack tens of thousands of warships. "The Corruptor fleet has entered our range," the officer who was looking at the scanner shouted loudly. All weapons are firing at full force. The arsenal ship begins to project. With Mingze's order, all the warships and orbital defense modules in the planetary orbit instantly opened fire, and the overwhelming shells flew towards the flying Corruptor fleet. This sudden firepower coverage instantly stunned the Corruptor fleet. More than 8,000 warships were suddenly covered by shells, and their shields were shattered and shot into their bodies. The huge explosion instantly tore these warships into several pieces, and the red biological tissue gradually turned black and lost its vitality. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Corruptor fleet sped up again in an instant. This time, the speed up seemed to consume a lot of their physical energy, and black spots began to appear on the red biological tissue. However, the effect of this speed up has obviously been achieved. At the current speed, the Corruptor fleet can reach the current position of the Imperial battleships after enduring 5 more rounds of salvos from the Sith Empire. As long as they get close to the Imperial battleships, they can take down the small number of Imperial battleships in one fell swoop with their own melee mode. Once these flexible battleships are taken down, the Corruptor battleships can penetrate the slow-moving orbital platform of the Empire from the bottom. The Corruptor fleet rushed towards the Imperial fleet desperately. The huge fleet was like a huge mountain pressing towards the Imperial fleet. Arsenal destroyers, open fire immediately. Release the shell storm. Li Ming slapped the table. The arsenal destroyers scattered in the Imperial fleet lowered their bows one after another, and aimed the 3 huge shell storms on their backs at the approaching Corruptor fleet. Fire, shells were accelerated in the barrels, and when they entered space, the thrusters at the rear of the shells were ignited, accelerating the shells to a faster speed. Just like rocket launchers in the Earth's atomic energy era, mass accelerating shells flew towards the Corruptor fleet like a rainstorm. A shell storm has 64 barrels and 640 mass accelerating shells. An arsenal destroyer has 3 shell storms, and the entire fleet has 3,000 arsenal destroyers. More than 5,760,000 mass accelerating shells poured down on the Corruptor fleet like a storm. Facing such a large number of mass accelerating shells, any defense and evasion are useless. A full 48,000 Corruptor warships had their shields shattered by the shells that were fired first, and the subsequent shells smashed the armor of the Corruptor warships piece by piece. The biological tissues filled in the hulls frantically converted kinetic energy into heat, emitting dazzling light outward. But it was useless. Almost every Corruptor warship was hit by more than 80 shells. Their shields could only withstand the first 20 shells, and the remaining 50 were absorbed by armor and biological tissue. The last 10 shells became the last straw that broke the camel's back. More than 10 mass accelerating shells tore the Corruptor warships, which had no protection and absorption capabilities, into pieces. Seeing the Empire's artillery storm was so terrifying, the Corruptors dispersed their formations one after another, and the distance between each warship was very large. The Empire destroyer that shot the artillery storm threw the empty launcher into the air. The ammunition supply ship on standby at the rear of the fleet immediately flew forward and quickly installed the full artillery storm launcher on the destroyer. The whole process took only 18 minutes. After supplying the destroyer with the artillery storm, the ammunition supply ship stretched out its mechanical arm to grab the empty launcher floating in the universe and flew back to the rear of the fleet. They had to continue to reload these empty launchers with ammunition. Keep going. Seeing that the shell storm he invented inadvertently could achieve such a great result, Li Mingze was a little excited, and instantly felt that the nearly 1 million Corruptor warships in front of him were not so terrifying. Your Majesty, just now it was only because the opponent was in a dense formation of assault that such a result was achieved. The enemy has now dispersed. Tianyi hit helplessly on the side. She couldn't let Li Mingze have any arrogance. I know, but with such a fast reloading speed, there won't be many left when the warships of the Corruptor civilization fly to the front. Li Mingze touched his chin. The arsenal destroyer, which had been reloaded, aimed at the Corruptor fleet again and fired a dense rain of bullets. Because the Corruptor fleet was dispersed, this round of attack had limited killing effect, but because of the 1-to-1 targeting combat method, the arsenal destroyer's salvo still took away nearly 30,000 Corruptor warships. From the appearance to the present, including the kills of the Imperial warships and the orbital defense module, the Corruptor fleet has sunk more than 86,000 warships. Even the Corruptors, who have nearly 1 million warships, are in a very bad mood after losing so many warships. Now they've just entered the range of the Empire. Order the drone mothership to start launching self-destruct drones. The drone mothership that received the order loaded the elliptical drones into the Gatling launcher in the middle of the drone mothership, and the drones were accelerated and fired at the Corruptor fleet. Faced with the Corruptor warships that have no long-range weapons and rely entirely on close combat, the Empire's drones have lost their containment function and can only use the self-destruct reactors carried in their bodies as torpedoes. The drones that flew into the Corruptor fleet at a high speed spread their wings, dodging the constantly waving tentacles, and crashed into the Corruptor warships. The current shield can only block the characteristics of carrying a large amount of kinetic energy or energy bodies. These drones slowed down suddenly after approaching the shield, and easily penetrated the shield and entered the shield of the Corruptor warship, not included in the paid word count. Thank you to all the brothers and sisters who subscribed, rewarded, voted for monthly tickets and recommended tickets. Without your continued support, I guess I would have lost a motivation to go on. Thank you. Chapter 256 Air Raid. The drones attached to the battleship armor detonated the self-destructive reactors they carried, and countless huge flashes appeared in the Corruptor fleet. The energy generated by the drone's self-detonation instantly shattered the shields of the Corruptor battleships, and the life tissues of the Corruptor battleships began to turn red. However, although the power of these drones' self-detonation was considerable, the number of them distributed to each Corruptor battleship was still too small, and it was not able to reach the point where the Corruptor's energy absorption was overloaded. However, the Corruptor battleships, whose shields were broken and whose energy absorption was close to full, became the best shooting targets for the Imperial fleet. The Corruptor battleships, whose defense capabilities were greatly weakened, only needed a few shots to tear them apart. After another salvo from the Empire, another 50,000 Corruptor battleships were sunk. Panki, the commander of the Corruptor fleet, felt something was wrong. If they rushed to the Imperial fleet like this, it was likely that only 1 in 10 of their fleets would survive, and there were still countless orbital defense modules to be dealt with. They would probably be annihilated here in the end. This was something they absolutely could not accept. All warships retreat. Let's take care of their colonies and force these warships that are shrinking in their tortoise shells out. With the order from the Corruptor commander Panki, all the Corruptor warships drew a U-shape in the air and flew backwards. Instead of forcing the tortoise shell down, it is better to attack their colonies and force the fleet of this civilization out of the defense circle. After these fleets are dealt with, the Empire planets without mobility will be at their disposal. As the Corruptor fleet gradually moved away, Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that the Corruptor fleet would ignore the losses and rush to him frantically. Then the fleet he had accumulated for so long would be completely scrapped, and many of the defense modules in the planetary orbit would be killed, which would definitely be a huge loss for a weak civilization like the Empire. As we expected, the next battle is the battle for the ground. We must not let the Corruptor civilization take root in the ring world, no matter how much it costs. We must clear out their ground forces. After Mingze finished speaking, he switched his consciousness back to his body in the underground command center of the ring world. Where is the enemy now? Mingze asked before he fully opened his eyes. Your Majesty, the enemy fleet is approaching the sky above ring world number 3. An officer who was staring at the holographic screen raised his head. Very good, prepare the anti-aircraft weapons of each colony, and open fire at full force when they start to airborne. Mingze nodded. A few hours later, the Corruptor fleet arrived above the nearest ring world. They sensed that there were many people and colonies in this ring world. If all these colonies were taken down, I don't believe that the Empire's fleet would be able to hold back. If the Empire's fleet does not come out, they will take root and multiply here until the entire Empire is wrapped in their territory. Thinking of this, the Corruptor commander Panki was very excited. If he could take down this civilization and get such a perfect galaxy, his reward would definitely be indispensable. At that time, it would not be impossible for him to command a large fleet of 10 million battleships. Prepare for orbital attack. The Corruptor commander Panki stuck his head out of a pool of red life tissue, and hundreds of nerve connection synapses behind his head were densely connected to the red life tissue. The many Corruptor warships that received the order opened the hatches on their abdomens, and huge bombs fell down one after another. You must know that although the Corruptors have evolved into biological civilization, their foundation of mechanical civilization has not been abandoned. They have been integrated into biological warships. Although they have abandoned long-range weapons, the most primitive atomic weapons have not been abandoned. This fusion weapon that can easily clean up the surface of the planet is very necessary for the corruptors, who have a large number of meat and livestock civilizations. Countless nuclear bombs fell rapidly towards the surface of the ring world under the action of gravity acceleration. Just when the corruptor civilization thought that many colonies on the ground were going to be easily wiped out, many fusion bombs were instantly decomposed in the light film and disappeared into the air. Damn it! The corruptor commander widened his eyes in shock. The protective ability of this shield is too abnormal. Although it was already known that the protection mechanism of such a huge relic must be very strong, it was unexpected that a bomb with such a slow flying speed could also be decomposed. Sir, this shield may have a recognition mechanism that can determine the properties of flying objects and automatically decompose the weapons. A corruptor wrapped an atomic weapon with his tentacles and gently sent it to the light film. What shocked the corruptors happened was that the atomic weapon gradually melted in the corruptor's tentacles until the tentacles could no longer feel the existence of anything. It has nothing to do with speed. This light film can automatically eliminate fission weapons. Corruptor Commander Pan Ki frowned. Sir, then let our ground forces take down this ring world. Our warriors are the most powerful in the galaxy and will not fear any battle. A holographic image of a corruptor wrapped in heavy armor appeared in front of Commander Pan Ki. Okay, the rest is up to you. Pan Ki nodded and retracted his head into the red organization. As you say, I will definitely live up to your expectations. The figure of the heavily armored corruptor disappeared. After a while, 10 huge holes opened outward on both sides of the lower part of all the corruptor warships, and 10 groups of black shadows were ejected. The 864,000 corruptor warships that still survived now densely ejected 8.64 million black shadows toward the ring world, and these black shadows fell toward the colonies in various parts of the ring world like a storm. Commander, half of the ground forces we carried have been deployed. The heavily armored corruptor appeared again. Yes, Commander Pan Ki did not stick his head out, but said in a dull voice. These black shadows flying rapidly toward the ground easily passed through the light film without suffering any damage. The black shadows that passed through the light film adjusted their formations toward the designated locations and formed square formations. Fire! Li Mingze of the Underground Command Center ordered as he looked at the black shadows that were rapidly descending. The anti-aircraft guns set up in various colonies fired shells at the black shadows flying in the sky. Missiles also took off from the missile launchers and flew towards the black shadows. Faced with such dense anti-aircraft firepower, the many black shadows did not panic at all, but kept adjusting their descending postures. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 Capture. As these shadows constantly adjusted their postures, they easily dodged shells and missiles. Enlarge those shadows. Li Mingze felt something was wrong and asked the soldiers to put the shadows on the holographic screen in the command hall. At this time, everyone finally saw the appearance of these shadows. These shadows were corruptors wearing heavy biological armor. As the red eyeballs on the heads of these corruptors turned, everyone could see that the sides of the corruptors would occasionally emit bursts of red flames. These flames adjusted the postures of the corruptors, allowing them to easily avoid the incoming shells and missiles. They are predicting the attack trajectory. Li Mingze frowned deeply. He didn't expect that these corruptors had already revealed a corner of their powerful abilities before they landed on the ground. All anti-aircraft guns are loaded with induction shells. Set the missiles to fly near the target and detonate, Li Mingze commanded calmly. The armor-piercing shells originally prepared to deal with the enemy's landing spacecraft or landing cabin were unexpectedly dodged by this group of corruptors, wasting a great opportunity. As each of the air-launching guns emitted a mechanical sound, another ammunition chain was passed into the gun barrel, and shells equipped with inductive warheads were accelerated and fired out. This time, the rain of bullets was no longer so easy to dodge. The shells that were originally thought to be dodged exploded one after another beside the corruptors. The air waves caused by the explosion pushed the corruptors in the air together, and the entire corruptor airborne formation became extremely chaotic in an instant. However, it was obvious that they had also experienced this form of anti-aircraft firepower when facing the meat-raising civilization they raised, and these corruptors quickly adapted to it. They stretched their hands downward, and the armor on their arms melted like snow. and 2 metal rifles stretched out from their arms. Then the armor on their shoulders also opened backwards, and 2 individual close-in defense launchers stretched out from them. The 4-gun muzzles aimed at the shells that kept flying into the air and sprayed out bone ammunition one after another. These bone bullets were synthesized in the bodies of the corruptors. The hardness of the bone shells was comparable to that of metal, and the biological explosive structure was wrapped under them. When they hit the shells, the small explosions engulfed the shells, and soon the shells and missiles flying into the sky disappeared. After clearing the threat, the corruptors aimed their guns at the anti-aircraft guns and missile launchers on the ground, and countless bullets flew towards the positions on the ground. After countless small explosions, the air defense position seemed to have been plowed, leaving only metal debris on the ground. After confirming that there were no air defense facilities that could threaten them, the weapons of the corruptors retracted. Obviously, driving these weapons required a lot of energy in their bodies. "What should you do, Your Majesty?" an officer asked with some concern as he watched the corruptor troops fly towards the colonies as if they were in an unmanned area. "Let the auxiliary troops and the colonies make contact with the corruptors first, and obtain their information through fighting. If they are defeated, immediately withdraw to the major defense points," Li Mingze said, touching his chin. "Yes," the officer nodded and gave the order. At this time, the corruptors were close to the ground. As they turned over in the air, the thrusters on their backs, legs and arms sprayed wildly, causing their speed to drop sharply. However, even with the use of buffer thrusters, the corruptors were still too fast. Countless corruptors smashed into the ground like cannonballs. Shallow pits appeared on the ground as if hit by a sledgehammer, and the air was covered with dust stirred up by the impact. Soon, huge black shadows kneeling on one knee appeared in the camera. "How strong are these guys' bodies? The special warfare armor can't withstand the impact just now," an officer shook his head. "They moved," as one person shouted. Everyone focused their attention on the holographic screen again. The corruptor who was kneeling on one knee slowly stood up, shook the armor on his body, and shook off the dust on the armor. The corruptor who stood up hesitated for a moment, then ran in one direction. The direction he was heading was exactly the gathering point of their square formation. As the corruptor ran, his legs soon became like helicopter blades, leaving only afterimages. 20 kilometers per hour, over 50 kilometers per hour, 60 kilometers per hour, everyone stared at the speedometer on the screen. "Let the auxiliary army contact him. Test the combat effectiveness of this corruptor. It would be even better if we can capture one," Li Mingze ordered the officer. A few minutes later, on the route of the corruptor, a fully armed auxiliary army team came behind the building. Now the city is full of densely packed corruptors. It is not easy to catch a lone one like this one. They cannot fail. Soon, the other 10 teams also came to this team carefully. This team of 132 people was arranged by Li Mingze to ambush the lone corruptor. "He's coming. Launch the interception net." As the team leader put down the detector in his hand, he turned around and whispered to everyone. "Received." The teams at each ambush point responded one after another. At this time, a black shadow running fast appeared on the road in the distance. "Fire." With the captain's order, several interception net launchers stretched out from various windows. 11 capture nets made of special alloys shot at the running corruptor. Facing the capture nets coming from all directions, the corruptor was covered under the net before he could dodge. Success. "Surround it." Everyone aimed their guns at the corruptor and surrounded it carefully. The trapped corruptor let out a roar, and just when everyone thought that the corruptor was roaring because of despair, the body of the corruptor began to swell like a balloon. The swollen corruptor was full of muscles all over his body, and then pieces of armor began to grow from the muscles, covering the whole body of the corruptor again. The corruptor, who was only 2 meters and 3 meters tall, instantly turned into a behemoth as tall as 2 stories. The Wallen worm gene is activated, and the remaining time for activation is 9 minutes and 52 seconds. As the biological auxiliary computer in the corruptor's brain issued a prompt, the corruptor roared angrily. "Little bugs, I will crush you." As he spoke, the corruptor reached out and grabbed the metal net on his body and exerted force. The metal net made a sharp tearing sound and was torn into 2 pieces. Roar! The corruptor slapped his chest armor with both hands and walked out of the broken net. Chapter 258, So Horrible. The capture team was shocked to see the giant monster, which was at least 6 meters tall, walking towards them. Every time the monster took a step, the ground seemed to tremble. Fear made their muscles stiffen. What are you standing there for? Fire! A captain's shout broke the frozen atmosphere. Hundreds of rifles were aimed at the huge corruptor transformer and the triggers were pulled. Countless bullets hit the corruptor transformer violently, but to everyone's disappointment, these bullets did not penetrate the armor of the transformer. The corruptor transformer hit by the rain of bullets absorbed the kinetic energy carried by the bullets, and the exposed skin turned into dazzling red. Hurry up, keep firing, as long as he reaches the upper limit of his tolerance, he will be finished, a captain shouted. Obviously, the Empire has informed all troops of some of the special abilities of the corruptor and how to deal with them. The corruptor transformer, sensing the danger, roared, kicked hard on the ground with his left foot, and the seemingly clumsy body shot towards the encirclement of the Imperial Auxiliary Army like a sharp arrow. As 6 bone claws popped out from his hands, the deformed body leaped into the air and swung at a soldier of the Auxiliary Army. The soldier of the Auxiliary Army who was targeted instinctively raised his rifle to block the claws. But the sharp claws of the deformed body easily cut his rifle into 4 pieces. And the auxiliary soldier himself and his power armor were also cut into 4 long strips in an instant. After killing the auxiliary soldier, the deformed body did not stop, but quickly rushed towards the auxiliary soldier beside him. Seeing the deformed body rushing towards him fiercely, the extremely terrified auxiliary soldier frantically pulled the trigger at the deformed body, hoping to block 1 or 2, but the energy absorption of the deformed body was too abnormal. Countless bullets hit it and lost kinetic energy and fell to the ground, and the body temperature of the deformed body only rose by a few tenths of a degree. As the claws of the deformed body swung down, the auxiliary soldier's eyes went black and he lost consciousness. The corruptor, who had found the rhythm of the battle, began to shuttle among the soldiers of the auxiliary army, and from time to time he would lift one person to block the bullets, giving his body time to release energy. As if he disliked the slow killing speed of cold weapons, the corruptor decisively ejected the 2 bone bullet launchers on his arms. While killing the auxiliary soldiers with his claws, he would raise his arms from time to time and shoot at the auxiliary soldiers. With each explosion, a green dot representing the Imperial soldiers on the screen would disappear. Too scary, everyone in the command room muttered to themselves as they looked at the completely black screen. In just 8 minutes, this corruptor transformed body wiped out 11 fully staffed auxiliary army squads. You have to know that this is a force of up to 132 people, not just 2 or 3 cats and dogs. They are auxiliary army veterans who have come all the way from the Parker Alliance. They have participated in countless battles. Although they are only second-line work, they have exchanged fire with the enemy for no less than 20 times. This capture team composed of veterans was ambushed. They were completely wiped out by a corruptor. And the corruptor didn't even shed a drop of blood. Your Majesty, what should we do? Several officers looked at the silent Mingze. Order all the teams outside to return to the defense base, lay down all the anti-aircraft guns in the defense base, and replace them with high-speed armor-piercing shells. At the same time, replace all rifle ammunition with short-range special incendiary armor-piercing shells. Let them hold on to each defense point and wait for us to deploy new troops. Mingze's hands kept tapping on the table. The so-called short-range special incendiary armor-piercing shells are specially developed by the Empire for the corruptor ground forces that may be encountered. Because considering that the corruptor ground forces are likely to contain genes that can absorb energy, this special ammunition has been specially improved and has a range of only 150 meters. And this short range brings extremely powerful kinetic energy and super high bullet flight speed. The high combustion agent in the bullet can explode suddenly after the bullet kinetic energy is absorbed, and the high combustion agent inside the bullet can be sprayed onto the corruptor armor. At that time, the continuous high temperature brought by the high combustion agent will make the corruptor constantly absorb energy, and the continuously absorbed energy will make its own temperature continue to rise. At this time, the high combustion agent will play another important role, which is to prevent the corruptor from dissipating heat outward, so as to achieve the purpose of destroying its defense and eliminating the corruptor in one fell swoop. At this time, many auxiliary troops in the city who received the command of the headquarters put away their weapons and withdrew to various defense points through the underground drainage system. After the corruptors on the ground gathered together, they found that except for being attacked during the airborne landing and a lone corruptor being ambushed, they had not been attacked once in the entire ring world. They did not encounter a soldier from the Empire along the way. Not to mention armored vehicles and tanks and other equipment. "We need to contact the warships in orbit," the commander of the Corruptor ground force said, turning around and connecting to the fleet on the track. The headquarters said that these Imperial people hid in various defense points in the city. "You go separately to break through each defense point," the commander ordered the soldiers under his command. Such scenes also happened in hundreds of colonies throughout the Ring world. More than 8 million Corruptors are scattered in 800 colonies throughout the Ring world, and each colony has only a handful of people. You have to know that each Imperial colony is a super city that can accommodate 25 million people. These tens of thousands of Corruptors thrown in are just a grain of sand in a sandpit. Watching the Corruptors on the screen disperse and rush to various defense points, Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that these Corruptors would gather together again. You have to know that the individual strength of these Corruptors is already so strong. If they are still concentrated together, the Empire will not even have the chance to defeat them one by one. And it is precisely because of their individual strength that the Corruptors used to be invincible in the universe. Every time they crushed all civilizations with absolute advantage, which made these Corruptors become arrogant. "Start plan number 1 and prepare to deploy alien troops," Mingze said to Tianyi. "Yes, Your Majesty." A few seconds later, in the basements of skyscrapers in various colonial cities, rows of culture tanks rose from the ground, and in the culture tanks were armored aliens. "Raise all the culture tanks. Prepare to start the hatching tower," following Tianyi's prompt. The central fountains of each square in the colonial city sank, and huge cylinders floated up from the ground. These cylinders were filled with culture tanks, but these culture tanks were currently empty. As the hatching tower rose, the culture tanks in each basement lit up green lights, and the liquid inside was emptied downwards. The aliens suddenly opened their eyes and roared. "Begin to assign the command of each alien unit to all commanders." Following Mingze's order, the communication device carried on the aliens had flashed blue light. Chapter 259, Alien First Battle. The function of these transmitters is to imitate the orders of the Empire commanders into special radio waves of the alien matrix and transmit them to each alien. Because of the special location of its installation, if the transmitter is destroyed, it also means that the alien is not far from death. At this time, rows of consciousness infiltration game consoles and a special experimental building of the Imperial Royal Military Academy lit up green lights. Commanders selected by the Empire, you are about to take over the command of the alien troops. These alien troops are the main force that blocks the enemy in front of our homeland. I hope you can use your usual training level to wipe out the enemy. As Tianyi's voice sounded in the infiltration game console, the scenery in front of everyone in the game console suddenly changed. "The glory of the Empire shines on you. Use the alien troops you command to eliminate the enemy. Long live the Empire." Tianyi's voice disappeared. In front of everyone appeared a bird's-eye view of the alien troops they controlled. These bird's-eye views were all scanned and synthesized from the scanning devices hidden in each skyscraper. These so-called commanders are not the regular army of the Empire. They are all 100,000 citizens of the Empire who won the special competition Alien Troops competition in fantasy. After several months of practice, these commanders are very good at using various tactics of the aliens. It can be said that the alien troops under their control will have far more strength than their original strength. Each commander will be assigned up to 200 aliens. They will command these aliens to cooperate with each other and defeat the Corruptors scattered in the city one by one. The killed Corruptors will be like special materials in the game. As long as the commander transports these Corruptors to the hatching tower will be able to decompose the Corruptors and then hatch 2 evolved aliens. In this way, the commanders can continuously enhance the strength of the alien troops they control. Once a certain number of Corruptors are annihilated, the Empire will also increase the number of controlled aliens for them. For example, killing 2 Corruptors can increase the number of newly born aliens. Once the number of aliens controlled by a commander is reduced to less than 50, the control of these 50 aliens will be deprived and then added to the name of the nearest commander with military merit. It is precisely by using this clear reward and punishment model that the passion of these commanders can be greatly mobilized, and the control mode close to the game can make these commanders forget that this is reality, thereby reducing their tension. The third perspective is loaded. Start loading the alien control program. The alien control program is loaded. Welcome, Commander, Your mission target is displayed above the small map. As the control rights are distributed, the aliens that were originally gathered together are divided into several groups and run towards their respective targets, while the corruptors at this time have not yet noticed the approach of danger. In the alley of a colonial city, 5 corruptors are running quickly towards the Imperial defense base not far away. On the rooftop that they cannot see, hundreds of aliens are constantly leaping on the wall. The suction cup structure extending from the alien feet allows them to easily adhere to the smooth walls of the Imperial building. Stop, the leading corruptor suddenly stretched out his hand and stopped. What's wrong? The other 4 looked at the corruptor in confusion. Did you hear anything? The corruptor looked up and looked around in confusion. At this time, the alien group had circled to the back of the building, quietly attached to the wall and dared not make a sound. Start the biological scanning device, the suspicious corruptor said to the auxiliary intelligent brain. An invisible scanning beam spread out in all directions. What they didn't know was that the aliens were born with shielding capabilities, so they didn't find anything in this wave of scanning. Nothing. It seems that I was too nervous. The corruptor looked at the empty screen and scratched his head awkwardly. The corruptor team took another step and ran towards the base. At this time, the commander who controlled the alien army breathed a sigh of relief. He was almost discovered. Fortunately, he decisively ordered to hide when the corruptor paused. The biggest killer of the aliens is silent sneak attacks. If they are discovered and turned into a strong attack, their power will be greatly reduced. No, we must launch an attack as soon as possible, otherwise the enemy will leave the street and enter the open area. The commander frowned and muttered to himself after looking at the big map. 5 aliens attack from the air and self-destruct. The remaining aliens will besiege from all sides. The commander gritted his teeth and gave the order. He didn't want to sacrifice the child but could not catch the wolf. The group of aliens who received the order quickly surpassed a running corruptor and secretly surrounded it. 5 of the aliens even exerted their hind legs violently, jumped from the tall building, and flew towards the corruptor on the ground. The corruptor on the ground keenly heard the sound of breaking air from the sky, and he suddenly turned around and ejected his claws. But they would never have thought that the purpose of these aliens was not to fight with them, but to approach them and self-destruct. Just when the corruptors thrust their claws at the aliens, these aliens did not block or dodge at all, and let the corruptors' claws pierce their bodies. The corruptor looked at the alien holding his arm in confusion. This was completely different from the battles they had encountered in thousands of years. Could it be that there were still races that liked to die? Not good. A corruptor suddenly thought of something and was about to throw the alien in his hand away. 5 slight explosions, the explosive devices in the 5 aliens were detonated, and countless alien blood was sprinkled all over the 5 corruptors. Waves of corrosion sounds came out, and the 5 corruptors were horrified to find that their armor was rapidly softening and decomposing. They have been facing human civilization for so many years, and have never encountered a biological civilization that can use super strong acid, and they have never swallowed the corresponding protective genes. Because the total number of gene bits for each person is the same, if they swallow a gene in another direction, it will inevitably affect the strength of their genes and other aspects. Damn. Our armor can't hold up. A corruptor kept moving his hands on his body, trying to wipe the alien blood off his body. But they didn't expect that their hands were also stained with this green blood, and their claws began to melt gradually. Now, all aliens start attacking. The commander behind the screen sneered and controlled the alien troops to pounce on the 5 terrified corruptors. Countless aliens jumped up from the tall buildings and pounced on the corruptors on the ground. Chapter 260 Strengthening. Seeing the aliens constantly jumping out, the 5 corruptors showed a look of fear in their eyes. Faced with this group of monsters that can self-destruct, they didn't know whether to fight or run away. If they fought, the blood of this monster was too dangerous. Use long-range weapons, one of the corruptors shouted and ejected the rifle on his arm. The other corruptors woke up as if from a dream, and ejected their 4 long-range weapons one after another, aiming at the aliens that kept flying in the sky. Self-destruct. The commander saw that the corruptors were going to use long-range weapons, which would definitely cause great damage to the aliens in the air, so it would be better to sacrifice 5 aliens again. The 5 named aliens shrank their bodies and rushed towards the 5 corruptors like sharp swords. The bullets of the corruptors hit the armor of these 5 aliens, and bursts of explosions gradually peeled off the armor of the aliens. Just when the bodies of the 5 aliens were about to be shot to pieces, they detonated themselves one after another. Countless green blood poured over the 5 corruptors again. The 4 bone bullet launchers on the corruptors were quickly dissolved in the highly corrosive blood of the aliens. The 5 corruptors completely lost their power to resist. Seeing that the situation was not right, the 5 corruptors roared and began to swell. The aliens approaching from the ground saw that the situation was not right and pounced on them fiercely. Their sharp claws tore dozens of huge wounds on the bodies of the 5 corruptors. The red blood in the corruptors' bodies suddenly spurted out along the wounds, and their originally expanding bodies suddenly shrank back like a deflated balloon. Originally, their armor was not so bad, but the acid produced by the 2 waves of alien self-explosions corroded and softened the armor of the 5 corruptors, and they were easily torn through by the aliens' sharp claws. Damn it! The corruptors who fell to the ground screamed and tried to get up from the ground, but the commander obviously did not intend to give them this opportunity. The 4 aliens stabbed their tails fiercely, easily piercing the chests of the corruptors and nailing them to the ground. Because the corruptor has a strong body recovery ability, in order to avoid accidents, the commander ordered the aliens to add 2 more tails to the abdomen and head of the 4 corruptors. He didn't want to kill the remaining corruptor, because it was a living experiment that the Empire needed. If he handed it over to the Empire, he would definitely get a generous reward. Several aliens crawled forward and cut off the limbs of the surviving corruptor with their claws, and cut it into a corruptor stick. Another alien crawled over and rolled it up with its tail, and walked to the middle of the team. Ha ha ha, a great harvest, the commander waved his fist excitedly. Commander A00324 Zhang Zhao, you have killed 4 corruptors and captured a living corruptor. You have won great military merit. The number of alien troops controlled has increased from 200 to 500, the new alien troops are on the way, please pay attention to receive them. Tianyi's voice appeared in Zhang Zhao's ears. At the same time, don't forget to take the dead corruptors to the incubation tower. Each corruptor can be exchanged for 2 upgraded aliens, Tianyi reminded again. Great. All troops, turn around and head to the nearest incubation tower. Zhang Zhao controlled his 190 aliens to run towards the nearest incubation tower. Your Majesty, a commander just successfully annihilated a team of 5 corruptors, sacrificing only 10 aliens. We carefully analyzed his tactics and sent the new weaknesses of the corruptors to all troops, Tianyi reported to Mingze, who was watching the battle. Okay, fortunately these corruptors did not devour the acid-resistant genes, Mingze nodded. At this time, Zhang Zhao had received the newly dispatched 310 aliens. The extra 10 were to supplement the aliens he had lost. The mighty alien troops, carrying 4 corruptor corpses and the living corruptor, jumped rapidly between the buildings. After a while, they arrived at the nearest incubation tower. The incubation tower, which was hundreds of meters high, flashed with strange green light, and a mechanical arm was flying in the air. Unlike Zhang Zhao's expectation, their team was not the first to arrive. At this time, there were already 2 teams of aliens under the incubation tower, but these aliens seemed to be waiting for something. It was not until a few minutes later that 2 groups of black shadows were lowered from the top of the incubation tower, and these aliens left with the black shadows. Someone has completed the exchange. It seems that I have to work harder. Zhang Zhao touched his chin and commanded the alien troops to approach the incubation tower, placing the 4 corpses and the living corruptor on the ground. At this time, the mechanical arm of the incubation tower rolled up the 4 corpses and threw them into an open hole. The living corruptor was grabbed by the mechanical arm and thrown into another hole leading directly underground. Start extracting biological energy and strengthening genes. Begin injection of strengthening genes. Strengthening gene injection is completed, and the cultivation of enhanced aliens begins. Please wait for half an hour. The system prompt appeared in front of Zhang Zhao. Zhang Zhao began to wait in boredom. During his waiting, several waves of small alien troops arrived one after another. Cultivation is complete, pay attention to receive. As the system prompt sounded, the cultivation tanks on the cultivation tower were slowly opened, and 8 giant aliens that were 2 times larger than the current aliens were grabbed by the mechanical arm and placed on a platform. Then, pieces of heavy armor were attached to the enhanced aliens, fully arming them. The enhanced alien, its culture medium comes from the powerful life-form corruptor. After devouring many undamaged genes in the corruptor, this alien has become more powerful than before. The speed is increased by 1.5 times, the strength is increased by 2 times, and it also has a higher absorption rate, energy absorption structure, and a new dynamic vision. The shell has also become harder, Information about the enhanced alien appeared in front of Zhang Zhao. Fuck, awesome, Zhang Zhao didn't expect the enhanced alien to be so powerful. 8 armored aliens were placed on the ground. These aliens had a red eyeball on their heads. This must be the so-called dynamic vision, which is the ability used by the corruptor to dodge anti-aircraft fire. Perfect. Perfect. Zhang Zhao kept rotating his perspective, secretly smacking his lips at the 8 black aliens. Capturing a corruptor will reward you with an additional 300 ordinary aliens. They are already on their way, please pay attention to receive them, Tianyi's voice sounded. This living corruptor has a high research value and deserves the reward from the Empire. Soon, with the arrival of 300 new aliens joining the team, the number of alien troops controlled by Zhang Zhao has reached 808. Now in the entire ring world, there are no more than 2 commanders who can have so many aliens. Looking at such a large alien army, Zhang Zhao is full of confidence in the future, and controls his alien troops to rush towards the city. In contrast to him, a 10-man corruptor team outside the city has enough space to dodge because of the wide terrain they are in, making it extremely difficult to attack. Several alien teams have already been lost to this 10-man team. Because the terrain is flat, many aliens can be discovered by the corruptors when they are far away. The corruptors can calmly fire their rifles and kill all the aliens rushing at them within 500 meters. The next chapter may be delayed when it is automatically updated. Chapter 261 Robot Troops. Remember, it is forbidden to use aliens in open areas in the future. Mingze looked at the aliens on the holographic screen with some reluctance. Yes, I have informed all commanders. All commanders who have sacrificed all alien troops have been deprived of their command authority. Tianyi nodded. Start deploying robot troops. Let's test the combat effectiveness of the new robot troops, Mingze said and pressed the button on the controller in front of him. On a flat ground not far from the 10 corruptors, as the soil fell, several huge holes suddenly appeared. Countless metal balls ejected from the holes and rushed towards the place where the corruptors were. 200 robots will be activated in this test, and the target is a 10-man corruptor team. The robot is operating normally, the weapon system is online, and the shield is online. As a series of numbers flashed in Tianyi's eyes, the speed of the robot became faster and faster. In less than 5 minutes, the robot army approached the corruptor team. As many metal balls rushed up a slope, the metal balls turned into 4-legged robots in midair. Fire! With Tianyi's order, many robots aimed their gauze machine guns at the corruptor team. Countless bullets were fired at the corruptors. The bullets specially made for the corruptors hit the corruptor's armor and burst into flames. The corruptor's armor, which was attacked by both kinetic energy and thermal energy, soon began to turn red. The corruptors reacted and rolled on the ground. After dodging some of the bullets, they ejected the bone bullet launcher and shot at the robot troops. However, since the robot troops were equipped with shield generators, the corruptors' bone bullets hit the robots and only caused ripples in the shields. Just a few seconds later, when the shields of the robots in the first row were about to fail, the robots in the first row moved to the right rear, and the robots with intact shields moved forward to block the robots whose shields were about to fail. The robots whose shields were about to fail rushed back in the sea of robots and came to the end of the queue to restore their shields. 10 corruptors were shot into pieces of flesh under the shameless human wave tactical attack of the robots. The unwilling look in the eyes of the corruptors before they died made Mingze very happy. The combat capability of the robot troops in the wide area has reached the requirements. All robot troops in the ring world have begun to be activated, Mingze said with satisfaction, stroking his mustache. All robots have been activated and are rushing to the front line. In the plains and mountains of the ring world, the robot warehouses that had been built long ago rose from the ground. One by one, the robots were arranged in neat squares and rolled in all directions, and the dust they raised along the way covered the sky. Your Majesty, we have currently deployed 12 million aliens and 20,000 mutants in the ring world, and 43,000 have died in battle. The auxiliary forces deployed to perform defense missions in the ring world have deployed 28 million soldiers, and 50,000 have died in battle. The orbital airborne force has deployed 2 million soldiers, and 10,000 have died in battle. The deployed robots and mechanical troops have not yet been deployed, so there are no casualties for the time being. So far, our troops have annihilated more than 10,000 corruptor soldiers. Tianyi reported the latest battle situation to Mingze. Tianyi waved his hand while speaking, and a huge holographic map covered the floor of the command room. At present, all cities are still in our hands. The corruptor troops are scattered throughout the ring world. Because their front line is too long and the range is too wide, the number of people in each of their teams is too small, giving us the opportunity to defeat them one by one. Tianyi said that some scattered red dots representing the corruptor troops appeared on the holographic map. These red dots are surrounded by dense green, blue and yellow dots. The green dots represent the ordinary ground forces of the Empire, the yellow dots represent the active alien forces, and the blue dots represent the robot forces. In general, although these corruptors are extremely powerful individually, they will not cooperate, so our advantage is very great now, Tianyi concluded. At this time, in the ring world orbit, a meeting was also taking place in the corruptor flagship. Is this your ability? Is this what you said about living up to my expectations? Such a powerful ground army has been commanded by you like this. The face of the corruptor fleet commander Mingze, who stretched out from the red organization, was distorted because of anger, making his face even more weird and terrifying. Sir, we know we are wrong. We should not be arrogant and fight separately. The commander of the ground force lowered his head. In one day, you have lost more than 10,000 brave warriors. What's the use of you bunch of trash? The commander of the corruptor fleet became more and more angry. Sir, we will immediately withdraw our forces, but our soldiers in this ring world cannot get supplies at all. The marine commander nodded in response. At the supply point, I will order the fleet to sink 300 warships to the ground. You will expand outward with the self-sunk ships as the core. The second batch of troops will also be airdropped to the ring world immediately. This time, don't pay attention to the imperial strongholds in the wild. You must give priority to taking the cities in the ring world. Mingze, the commander of the corruptor fleet, said and retracted his head into the red biological tissue. Because the corruptor fleet unilaterally focuses on space combat, all warships are not equipped with anti-gravity devices. Originally, when facing various animal civilizations, they always directly airdropped troops and resolved the battle in 2 days. They have never encountered such a situation where they need to fight a protracted war and need supplies. This is simply incredible to them. As a last resort, the corruptor commander can only choose to sink the warships to the surface of the planet. When the war is over, the pilots of these warships can let the corruptor marines carry them back to orbit. A few minutes later, more than 8 million shadows jumped from the corruptor fleet in orbit and flew towards the surface of the ring world. The corruptor troops on the surface also stopped and began to move together. The corruptors in the wild also abandoned their bases in the wild and ran towards the nearest city. At this time, the new corruptor marines in the sky had also reached the sky above the city. With gusts of air spurting out, the newly arrived troops fell to the ground. As time went on, more and more corruptor troops gathered together. And the original 5-man and 10-man teams became large forces of hundreds of people. The commanders who were roaming around to attack lone corruptor teams found that the lone teams were becoming more and more difficult to find. Many times they ran into large forces of hundreds of corruptors and had to retreat. The reduction in the number of lone corruptor teams has a direct impact on the sharp drop in the number of corruptor losses. Chapter 262 Lightning Strike. A few minutes later, hundreds of huge spaceships passed through the light film of the ring world and appeared above various cities. The tentacles on the outer layer of the spaceships turned into huge film-like wings, floating in the air to reduce the speed of the spaceships falling to the ground. The effect of the parachute-like wings of these spaceships was very obvious. The corruptor warships, which were originally falling rapidly due to the weight, quickly slowed down. With a loud bang, the corruptor warships landed heavily on the square in the center of the city, smashing an incubation tower into pieces. The parachute-like tentacles of the spaceships also returned to their original state and inserted into the ground fiercely. These erected tentacles gradually revealed holes leading to the interior of the spaceship. Some corruptors who consumed a lot of energy after high-intensity combat came to the holes opened on the tentacles in front of the spaceship and walked in. A few minutes later, the corruptor marines who had replenished their energy came out of the spaceships one after another. These corruptors who had replenished their energy gathered together and ran towards the Imperial stronghold in the city again. The atmosphere in the underground command center located in the central colony of the ring world was silent, and everyone looked at the holographic map on the ground in silence. The scattered red dots on the map have gathered together, turning into huge red spots. Your Majesty, now these corruptors have gathered together, and our cannibalization plan has failed. It turns out that we are on par with them by relying on our huge numbers and home advantage." An officer frowned and said. "But they sent a second batch of landing troops, and our advantage has disappeared." "Let me think about it." Li Mingze rubbed his temple. "We must fight quickly. We need to get rid of them immediately. If the corruptors send reinforcements again, we will be completely finished." Li Mingze made up his mind. "Your Majesty, what should we do?" All the officers looked at Li Mingze. "Let all the arsenal destroyers of the fleet remove one shell storm and replace it with an anti-gravity device. All cruisers and battleships should also be equipped with shell storm launchers." Li Mingze waved and called out the holograms of the 3 warships, removed the weapons on the spacecraft, and replaced them with shell storms. "But Your Majesty, our artillery storm inventory is insufficient," Tianyi reminded on the side. "This operation does not require ammunition replenishment. The mission will be completed after all the shells are fired," Li Mingze said, and waved his hand again to replace the warship with the colony of the ring world. "You see, the corruptor fleet is not equipped with anti-gravity devices. They cannot enter the atmosphere to fight, and we can take advantage of their weakness," Li Mingze said, and the screen switched to the corruptor fleet in orbit again. "I call this plan the Thunder Strike Plan." The Imperial fleet appeared on the screen, and the Imperial fleet was flying towards the corruptor fleet at high speed. When the Imperial fleet approached the corruptor fleet, all the warships lowered their bows and aimed the artillery storms on their backs at the corruptor fleet. After countless shells flew out, the Imperial fleet accelerated in the direction of the bow and rushed into the atmosphere of the ring world. After our fleet rushed into the atmosphere, the corruptor fleet was helpless against us. The corruptor fleet chasing the Imperial fleet in the holographic screen stopped in front of the atmosphere. "We will send ammunition supply ships with artillery loading equipment to wait in the ring world." The holographic screen began to zoom in and out on the ring world until a huge plane appeared on the ring world. Thousands of ammunition supply ships were docked on the plane, and countless gunboats were surrounding and protecting the ammunition supply ships in the air. As the Imperial fleet approached, these supply ships took off and flew over the Imperial warships, refilling the warships with ammunition. In this way, the Imperial fleet can strike back and weaken the corruptor fleet again. After the plan is finally completed, the Imperial fleet will fly back to the protection range of the 4 planetary orbital defense modules to refill ammunition. "How is it?" Li Mingze knocked on the table proudly. "Perfect. Perfect, Your Majesty," many officers echoed. "When the strength of the corruptor fleet is weakened to a certain extent, our fleet will be able to completely eliminate them. At that time, it will only be a matter of time before their ground forces are eliminated." Li Mingze nodded with satisfaction. A few days later, the Imperial forces in the ring world began to shrink their defenses, voluntarily giving up some cities and concentrating together to strengthen the defense force in the hope that the Imperial Thunder Strike Plan could be carried out. The Imperial fleet also entered into tense weapon replacement. Mass accelerators were removed from cruisers and battleships, and shell storm launchers were installed one by one. Supply ships carrying supply ammunition also took off from New Star and flew towards the nearest ring world, escorted by Imperial gunboats, which would be responsible for the safety of the supply ships on the ring world. At this time, the corruptors were very puzzled when they found that the Empire sent transport ships to the ring world. Was the Empire planning to reinforce the ring world? "We must speed up. Send elite troops to raid the major strongholds of the Empire." Panki, commander of the corruptor fleet, issued an order to the Marines. The ground forces that received the order drew 5 elite squads of 20 people from senior officers. Because the corruptor civilization advocates the power of genetic evolution, the higher the degree of evolution, the higher his status. The physical ability of the corruptors who can become corruptor officers is much stronger than that of ordinary corruptors, and they are also equipped with a large number of technological creations, which have increased their combat capabilities by several levels. The extracted corruptor officers are also covered with a layer of metal armor outside the biological armor, and there is a reactor on the chest to power themselves. They are also equipped with shield generators on their backs. Your target is the 5 large strongholds in this city. These strongholds are the main material storage points and command centers of this city. Your mission is to tear these 5 strongholds apart from the inside, which is extremely important for us to seize control of this city, the commander shouted to the special operations team. "Let's go." The commander waved his hand. The 100 corruptor special operations team members who were standing on the ground just now disappeared strangely. The only trace of them was the footprints that appeared from time to time on the ground. The defenders of the 5 Imperial outposts in the city were unaware of the impending danger, and were enjoying the sudden retreat of the corruptors and their lack of attack. Chapter 263 Invisibility. The last night of the year came to the A033 colony city in the Ring World Zone 3. The Sith Star, which flew between the A033 city and the sun, temporarily blocked the sunlight. The guards at the number 93 outpost were already a little tired. This was their 8th day in the Ring World. 8 days of intense fighting and endless daylight had brought the soldiers to the brink of collapse. The sudden arrival of darkness made them begin to relax. 20 shadows appeared in a building less than 500 meters away from the number 93 outpost. The target point is ahead. You go here, and I'll lead the others there. The commander of the team pointed to the hologram on his wrist and gestured. Yes, sir. The 20 shadows disappeared again, and 2 rows of footprints appeared on the ground not far away. A soldier of the auxiliary army was leaning tiredly against the outer wall of the base with a rifle in his hand. Since the corruptors withdrew, they have not encountered an attack again. This made the guards relax their vigilance. In their opinion, the enemy would not appear again in a short time. Suddenly, the soldier holding the gun was pierced through the body by a metal blade, and a black shadow flashed and appeared in the original place. It was a corruptor. This is number 1. The guards have been dealt with. You can come in, the corruptor said and turned off the controller that controlled the self-defense turret. At the same time, the 20 Imperial Auxiliary Army soldiers on duty outside the stronghold were all pierced through the body by the corruptor. The corruptor who dealt with the guards inserted his hands into the wall around the stronghold and suddenly exerted force upwards. His body jumped more than 10 meters high and fell into the stronghold. Who is it? A member who was patrolling with the alien team heard several heavy collisions and hurriedly aimed his weapon at the corner of the wall. 10 aliens also roared at the corner. Attention all personnel. Corruptors have infiltrated the base. All soldiers on duty outside the base have been sacrificed. Anyone who finds anything suspicious should report it immediately. In the base monitoring center, an officer suddenly found that the green light spots representing all the soldiers on duty outside the base disappeared at the same time. Sir, the patrol soldier following the alien team was pierced through the throat by a spike before he could report it. As the red thin tube connected to the spike was suddenly retracted, the spike was retracted back to the arm of the corruptor elite. The alien, who noticed something was wrong, suddenly rushed in the direction where the spike disappeared. 10 piercing sounds were heard, and 20 metal swords that were emitting bright light pierced the flying aliens. As the 10 corruptors holding giant swords exerted force, the 10 aliens were torn in half by the giant swords. Countless alien blood splashed out and sprinkled on the 10 corruptors, but unfortunately, the shields equipped by the corruptor elites blocked the acid that could corrode their armor. Then the glowing giant sword disappeared again, and the 10 corruptors disappeared again, but drops of acid were left on the ground. The enemy is advancing towards the center of the base. The number of casualties among our guards is rising rapidly, the officer in the monitoring room said nervously to the communicator, watching the green and yellow dots disappearing on the screen. Order the Sith warriors to go. The general on the other end of the communicator frowned and said. At this time, a shuttle-shaped spaceship rushed out from the sand dunes next to the city and flew rapidly into the sky. A few minutes later, 4 more spaceships flew out and flew towards the 4 strongholds of the city. In base number 93, dozens of robots stood guard in front of the main building inside the base, and automatic turrets kept scanning the surrounding open space. How is it? Have you found where these invaders are? In the monitoring room, many senior executives of the base gathered next to the monitor. No, sir, but we have gathered all the heavy troops at the main gate of the base. The enemy can't get in. Before the officer finished speaking, 10 huge figures appeared from the air above the robot troops guarding the gate. These huge figures are the second form of the corruptors, that is, the state after transformation. Pieces of metal armor protect the important parts of these big guys, and these 10 corruptors hold 2 alloy swords diagonally in their hands and slash at the robots and turrets around them. The shields of the robots and turrets only withstood the attack of the first energy sword, and the second energy sword that followed tore their shields apart. The fragile metal structure of the robots and turrets could not withstand the huge force of the second form of the corruptors at all, and they were chopped into several pieces. Sir, we have lost all the guards at the main gate, and the supporting guards are rushing to the main gate hall. Not good. The enemy has a second force, and they took advantage of our deployment at the main gate to raid gate number 8. All the robots and alien troops we deployed at gate number 8 have been sacrificed. The officer staring at the monitor was a little anxious. Immediately wake up the robots under repair and the alien troops under maintenance. The officers were a little anxious. After 8 days of high-intensity fighting, these robots and alien troops were sent to the base underground for maintenance while the enemy withdrew. I never thought that these corruptors would bypass the countless early warning systems in the city and kill them by surprise. Now most of the guards of the base are still repairing hundreds of meters underground, and I don't know if they can catch up. Sir, the Sith warrior squad has arrived, an officer in charge of external communications said excitedly to everyone. At this time, above the base, a shuttle-shaped spacecraft was suspended above the 10 corruptors who were cutting the gate. Seeing the spaceship, the corruptors were stunned. They stopped the energy swords that were cutting the door, turned around and aimed their hands at the aircraft in the sky. With 10 explosions, countless bone spurs glowed red and shot towards the spaceship in the sky. The shuttle-shaped spaceship did not dodge, but opened the hatch outward, and 10 white figures jumped down from the sky. At this time, the bone spurs shot at the spaceship had hit the armor of the spaceship, and the entire spaceship was shot into sieve and exploded violently. Countless pieces of spaceship fragments shot out in all directions. The Sith warriors in white warrior uniforms who were falling to the ground slightly supported their hands on the ground, and an invisible force slowly lifted them to the ground. The fragments of the spaceship shot from behind them were also pushed aside by an invisible force and hit the ground. The 10 Sith warriors standing on the ground were soon surrounded by small fragments, but they were unharmed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 The Power of the Sith is with us. The power of the Sith is with us, 10 Sith warriors shouted and drew the hilts of the energy swords from their waists. 10 white beams of light shot out from the hilts. Before the energy beams were completely ejected, the 10 Sith warriors had already rushed towards the corruptor elite team. The corruptor sneered and picked up a few pieces of metal debris from the robots and threw them at the Sith warriors. However, before these debris flew close to the Sith warriors, they were thrown aside by the power of the Sith with a wave of their hands. Seeing this, the corruptors quickly aimed their arms at the Sith warriors who were rushing towards them, and hundreds of bone spurs gushed out. The tops of these specially modified bone spurs emitted a terrifying red light due to the extremely high temperature. Unexpectedly, when these bone spurs were several meters away from the Sith warriors, the warriors rotated the energy swords in their hands and swept away all the flying bone spurs. The corruptors slapped their chests and roared twice, pulling out the energy giant swords inserted in the gate and rushing towards the Sith warriors. The Sith warriors, who had already focused their attention on the corruptors, used the power of Sith to lift themselves up suddenly and jumped over the heads of the corruptors. The corruptors, who found that they had missed, then suddenly spun their giant swords to both sides, and the giant swords emitting amazing heat swept towards the warriors who had just landed. The Sith warriors, who had super strong reaction ability, used the same trick again, using the power of Sith to pull themselves back. The constantly flashing energy sword blades just swept past the noses of the warriors. Such a dangerous scene made Mingze in front of the holographic screen gasp. The warriors who avoided the attack waved their hands and grabbed dozens of small fragments from the ground beside them and threw them towards the corruptor elites. Countless fragments hit the corruptor elites who had just used up their strength and could not dodge in time, causing ripples on their shields. Seeing that the first attack failed, the Sith warriors grabbed the fragments that fell to the ground again and let them fly high. After the flying fragments rushed into the sky, they suddenly accelerated and rushed towards the corruptors on the ground. The corruptors rolled on the spot, trying to dodge the fragments that were rushing towards them in the sky. But their huge bodies were too big, and the fragments in the air turned slightly and aimed at the corruptors again. The fragments of the spacecraft carrying a lot of kinetic energy hit the corruptors one after another, and finally shattered their shields and dissipated them in the air. Seeing an opportunity, the Sith warriors immediately raised their swords and rushed towards the corruptors. When they approached the corruptors who had just straightened up, the Sith warriors jumped high and slashed at the corruptors with the beam energy swords in their hands. The corruptor elites, who had experienced thousands of years of fighting, had extraordinary combat qualities. When the Sith warriors jumped up, They had already made a response plan in their brains. As their bodies shrank, the originally huge bodies of the corruptors shrank to more than 2 meters in size in an instant. The swords swung by the Sith warriors naturally fell into the air. Seeing that the attack missed, the Sith warriors pulled out a flying thunder from their sleeves and swung it back violently. The corruptor elites, who had never encountered such an attack, were instantly shot by the flying thunder. The violent explosion enveloped the figures of the 10 corruptors. As the smoke of the explosion dissipated, the corruptors, who were dazzling red, walked out of the dust. Damn ends, the corruptor elites roared and ejected 2 half-meter-long energy swords from their arms. Due to technical reasons, their technology can only produce pure energy weapons of this length. The energy swords originally used to cut obstacles have now become weapons used by the corruptors to duel with the Sith warriors. The corruptor elites who came out of the smoke gradually quickened their pace, turning into black shadows and rushing towards the Sith warriors. If they were ordinary soldiers of the auxiliary army, they might be affected by the corruptors' sudden burst of speed of 100 kilometers per hour. But what they were facing at this time were Sith warriors in the Empire who possessed the power of Sith and had undergone a lot of devilish training. The Empire is with us, the Sith warriors roared and rushed towards the corruptor. The two parties, which were not far away from each other, collided in the blink of an eye, because the dust raised by the high-speed movement covered the fighting field of both parties. In the open space filled with dust, only bursts of light and shadows could be seen from time to time, or groups of flames suddenly burst out from time to time. These flames were the manifestation of the energy release generated by the collision of two energy weapons. How is it, do our Sith warriors have a good chance of winning? Looking at the dust in the scene that blocked the picture, Mingze was a little anxious. Because the armor of the corruptor elites and the warrior uniforms of the Sith warriors have the effect of shielding detection, Mingze, who didn't know what was going on in the field, could only worry. Your Majesty, don't worry. The nanorbits we deployed in the Sith warriors are monitoring their vital signs. No Sith warriors have been injured yet, Tianyi comforted him. That's good, Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, in the open space in front of the main building of base number 93, the corruptor elites and the Sith warriors of the Empire were fighting each other. From time to time, the energy weapons of both sides collided with each other in bursts of strong light. The two sides who failed to attack would each take a small step back, take a breath, and then rush forward again. At this moment, suddenly a Sith warrior was shattered by two energy giant swords, and his shield passed through his chest. A hidden corruptor elite appeared from the air. Damn, the corruptor team that passed through gate number 8 rushed over to attack. A monitoring officer slammed the table. No, the Sith warriors who saw their companions being killed were so anxious that their eyes turned red. The beam swords in their hands accelerated suddenly, and the strength in their hands increased a lot. At the same time, their attention was focused on the flying dust, trying to find clues of the invisible corruptor elites. Suddenly, some dust spread to both sides. The Sith warrior who found the abnormality immediately knew that an invisible corruptor was approaching. No. He soon noticed two more abnormalities. And the dust in two more places was spreading outward. Damn. 3 corruptor elites, the Sith warrior said to himself in despair. He suddenly thought that the opponent of the warrior who had just been killed and the murderer who killed him should have also been invisible and mixed into the battle. Now the corruptor who was targeting him and the 2 corruptors who had no opponents must be thinking of gathering together to get rid of them one by one. But facing such a desperate situation, the Sith warrior had no way out. He and a corruptor were just fighting evenly. Not to mention 4. Chapter 265 Sith Master. As 6 energy giant swords lit up from behind him, the Sith warrior knew that his life had come to an end. Die together. Long live the Empire. The Sith warrior threw out a beam energy sword, stretched out his hand to rotate a knob on his belt and pressed it hard. A cluster of flashes appeared at the original place, and the reactor that powered the shield carried in the Sith warrior's belt exploded. The violent explosion blew away the dust in the venue. At this time, the remaining Sith warriors found that for some reason, there were only 3 people left in their team of 10. One was pierced through the chest by the energy giant sword of the corruptor, one exploded, and the other 5 Sith warriors were stabbed into the ground by metal swords. After seeing that there were only 3 Sith warriors left, the corruptors showed up. They planned to capture a few Sith warriors of the Empire and take them back for research. Their genes were still worth devouring. There were 11 corruptors with giant swords in hand, and 9 corruptors with half-meter-long energy swords extending outward from their hands. They surrounded the remaining 3 Sith warriors. It seemed that the self-explosion of the Sith warrior just now did not cause much damage to them. "Captain, what should we do?" a Sith warrior asked his captain desperately. "We will fight them, and we will take someone with us even if we die," Captain Hao Yiteo replied viciously with gritted teeth. "Captain, we will hold them back, and you can retreat. Both of us are single, but my sister-in-law and nephew are waiting for you at home. You can't die." 2 team members grabbed Hao Yiteo's sleeves. "No, I can't abandon you," Hao Yiteo shook his head firmly. "Captain, we have no parents since we were young. After we came to the Sith Warrior Academy, you have always taken care of us as your own brothers. Now it's time for us to repay your kindness." A team member stared at Hao Yiteo with scarlet eyes. "Captain, you will have a chance to revenge us after you run away. If we all die here, there will be no chance for revenge." No, Hao Yiteo was determined. How could he abandon his team members and run away? "Captain, go." The 2 team members looked at each other, and suddenly used the power of Sith to push Hao Yiteo back, and then rushed towards the corruptor with the energy sword. "No." Hao Yiteo looked at the 2 team members rushing into the encirclement of the corruptor and stretched out his arms weakly. The 2 Sith warriors who thought they could delay for a while rushed into the encirclement of the corruptor elite but failed to do so. Countless energy swords fell from all around, instantly shattering their shields, and then slashed at the 2 Sith warriors. So many energy swords made the 2 warriors have no time to block, and they were chopped into several strips of meat in the blink of an eye. No. You deserve to die." Hao Yiteo, who was still stunned at this time, widened his eyes when he saw this scene. Hot tears burst out, blurring his vision soon, and Hao Yiteo fell to his knees helplessly. Seeing that the only remaining Sith warrior had lost the power to resist, the corruptors turned off the energy generator on the giant sword, formed a circle and slowly approached. "You all deserve to die. I will kill you. Your Majesty, please guide me to the light," Hao Yiteo, who was kneeling on the ground, muttered to himself. Suddenly, he raised his head sharply, startling the approaching corruptor elites, and turned on the energy generator of the giant sword in his hand again. "Your Majesty, the brain of this Sith warrior named Hao Yiteo has experienced a violent fluctuation. His brain temperature is rising sharply. According to the consciousness monitoring device, this Sith warrior's admiration and respect for you has reached the peak. His brain structure has changed." "My God!" Tianyi suddenly covered his mouth. "What's going on?" Li Mingze looked at Hao Yiteo on the holographic screen. Hao Yiteo, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly reached out to grab his eyes. As he inserted his hands into his eyes and exerted force, his eyeballs were dug out. "I feel it. I feel it. This is the power that your Majesty has given me." Hao Yiteo began to become crazy after digging out his eyes. "Your Majesty, the energy level of the Sith power in his body is rising rapidly." Tianyi's face was serious. As soon as Tianyi finished speaking, a small breeze began to blow around Hao Yiteo. In just a blink of an eye, the small breeze gradually turned into a huge tornado rotating around him. The corrupted who noticed something was wrong slowly retreated. They didn't know what was going on. In the huge tornado, Hao Yiteo slowly stood up, tore off a long white cloth from his sleeves, covered his eyes and tied it behind his head. The white cloth was soon stained red by the blood flowing from his eyes. "I feel it. This is the origin of the universe." Hao Yiteo stretched out his hands as if he was hugging something. "Your Majesty, I will definitely not let you down." Hao Yiteo looked up at the direction of Li Mingze's screen, as if he saw Li Mingze himself through the screen. Although Hao Yiteo no longer had eyes, his eyes seemed to penetrate the screen and shine on Li Mingze. "What's wrong with him?" Li Mingze asked with some concern. The current situation was too terrifying. "According to my scan, the organ in his brain that produces the power of the Sith has evolved. Now he resonates with the neutrinos in the universe through this evolved organ. That means he can now control the power of neutrinos," Tianyi explained in disbelief. She also didn't expect that human organs could evolve to the point of controlling neutrinos, which is beyond the current research scope of the Empire's life sciences. "Neutrinos?" Li Mingze frowned in confusion. "Yes, neutrinos are difficult to detect, and their interaction with other substances is very weak. They are called ghost neutrinos. They can easily pass through the human body, buildings, and even planets. Now he can control the interaction between neutrinos and other substances, so that this kind of ghost trino can be used on various objects, Tianyi continued to explain. Just when Tianyi was explaining to Mingze how awesome Hao Yitao was in various ways, the tornado around Hao Yitao gradually disappeared in the air. As his eyes scanned the surrounding corruptor elites, the corruptors seemed to feel the overwhelming pressure and couldn't help but take a small step back. "Are you ready to die?" Hao Yitao said softly to the corruptors. Feeling the huge threat from Hao Yitao, the corruptor elites turned around and wanted to run, but found that they seemed to have hit a wall of air and couldn't move forward. Hao Yitao sneered, stretched out his hand and grabbed. And the corruptors were caught in the air in front of Hao Yitao by the invisible big hand made of particles. Chapter 266 The lightning strike plan begins. No. The limbs of the corruptors who were caught in the air kept swaying in the air, but it was useless. "Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily." Hao Yitao circled around the corruptors with a grim smile. As he stretched out his hand and grabbed outward, the metal armor on all the corruptors was torn off. "The good show has just begun." Hao Yitao licked his lips and stretched out his hand to grab in the air again. Suddenly, waves of blood mist floated in the air, and the biological armor of the corruptors themselves was torn off from their bodies. Many corruptors kept squirming in the air in pain, their bodies became twisted, embarrassed and ugly, and they were no longer as arrogant as they were at the beginning. Don't worry, there's more exciting things to come." Hao Yitao stretched out his hand in the air and made a pinching motion. In an instant, the arms of all the corruptors were pinched into thin pieces by the invisible big hand. However, Hao Yitao did not stop there, but continued to pinch the thighs of the corruptors. A few minutes later, the corruptor, which had turned into 20 pieces of meat paste, fell to the ground with a thud. Blood oozed out of the meat paste, and the entire flat ground was covered with the blood of the corruptor. "Tianyi, from now on, you should allocate some computing resources to monitor Hao Yitao's every move and his instant changes in thinking 24 hours a day." Although Hao Yitao's loyalty to him had reached its peak at this time, such a perverted and cruel method still made him a little uneasy. "Your Majesty, Hao Yitao should be the first warrior among the Sith warriors to be promoted to master. Do you want to personally?" Tianyi looked at Mingze. She knew that Mingze was a little nervous, so she didn't finish her words. "It doesn't matter. I will personally confer the title of Sith Master on him." Mingze waved his hand. "By the way, order the scientists in material science to find alloys that are immune to microparticles, in case of emergency." Mingze thought of something and called Tianyi, who was about to leave. After Hao Yitao eliminated the corruptor elites in this base, he controlled the particles to slowly lift himself up and then flew towards several bases invaded by the corruptor elites. In just one day, Hao Yitao cleared out the corruptors in the entire city, and the city returned to the hands of the Empire. The streets were full of soldiers holding flamethrowers to burn the bodies of the corruptors. At this time, the Imperial fleet, which had completed the replacement of weapons, regrouped in the orbit of Nuwa Star. Hoyun, who was in charge of this lightning strike, came to the bridge of the battleship early. "Sir, all the warships are in place, and we can set off at any time." The officer on Hoyun's left turned around. "Your Majesty, when do we set off?" Hoyun connected to Mingze's communication. "Wait for another hour. The troops on the ring world are focusing on clearing out the corruptor strongholds outside the supply area. You can set off when the supply area is completely safe." Mingze stood in the combat command center on Nuwa Star, holding his cane in both hands and standing in front of the holographic screen. He wanted to witness the destruction of this evil fleet with his own eyes. In less than an hour, the ground forces sent a message. With the help of many Sith warriors and Sith Master Hao Yitao, the ground forces had cleared all the corruptors within a radius of 500 kilometers from the supply point and created a safe isolation zone. And the scope of this safe isolation zone is still expanding as the troops advance. "Okay. I declare that the lightning strike plan has officially begun." Mingze took the intercom and gave an order to the waiting Imperial fleet. After receiving the Emperor's order, the Imperial fleet began to ignite the thrusters and left the orbit of Nuwa Star, flying towards the corruptor fleet in the distance. At this time, the corruptor fleet naturally discovered the Imperial fleet flying towards them. Oh? The Empire's fleet finally escaped from its tortoise shell. The corruptor commander Panky's body poked out from the red tissue, with dozens of thick tubes connecting him to the spacecraft behind him. "All warships, listen up." Enter the battle formation. We must leave these suicidal Imperial warships behind. The corruptor warships that were originally quietly suspended in the orbit of the ring world suddenly began to slowly wriggle, turning their bows to gather together towards the flagship. The enemy has entered the battle formation. Very good, all artillery storm launchers are preheated and ready to fire at any time. Ho-Yun touched his new mustache, because His Majesty the Emperor recently grew a new mustache, which made a group of officers who fanatically admired him also grow beards to follow suit, making mustaches a new fashion in the Empire. 10 minutes to reach weapon range, 5 minutes to reach weapon range, 1 minute left, 30 seconds, 10:9:8.21, fire. As the countdown ended, countless shells were fired from the Imperial fleet, pouring towards the corruptor fleet. As many as 10 million mass-accelerating shells fell into the corruptor fleet. Although the corruptor fleet had tried its best to dodge, the number of shells it faced was too large. The overwhelming shells blocked all their dodging space. Even if the warships in front dodged the shells, the warships behind it could not dodge. In just a few seconds, the corruptor fleet was taken away by this wave of bullets. Nearly 100,000 warships were taken away by this wave of bullets. Just when they were about to completely disperse to avoid the next attack, they found that the Imperial warships that had finished the attack did not stay to prepare for the next salvo, but instead accelerated towards the surface of the ring world. They want to run. Damn, this attack is a one-time attack. The corruptor commander, who was originally frightened by the Empire's attack, suddenly realized that if this attack could be used multiple times, then these Empire warships would not run away. Stop them. Don't let them escape to the ring world, Corruptor Commander Panky said angrily. The corruptor warships that were about to scatter suddenly stopped and turned around to rush towards the Empire warships. But unfortunately, they were too far away from the Empire's fleet. Although the corruptor warships were much faster than the Empire's warships, before they approached the Empire's fleet had already rushed into the atmosphere of the ring world. Seeing that the Empire's fleet passed through the light film of the ring world, a group of corruptor warships hurriedly stopped outside the light film and dared not move forward. If they also rushed into the atmosphere, then the corruptor warships without anti-gravity modules would fall headfirst to the ground. Chapter 267, The Supply Fleet is Destroyed. No. After we go back, we must let those idiot scientists install anti-gravity engines on all the warships. Panky gritted his teeth as he looked at the Imperial fleet that had already entered the ring world. Next time, he must block the Imperial fleet and the ring world in advance. He must not let the Imperial fleet play this trick again. Aren't they hiding in there? We'll block them on the track. All warships follow me. Panky retracted himself into the red control cabin. The corruptor fleet just followed above the Imperial fleet. No matter how the Imperial fleet in the atmosphere flew, it couldn't get rid of the follower on its head. HMPH, let's see how you get out. Panky smiled grimly as he looked at the Imperial fleet flying around on the holographic screen. However, he didn't know that this was just the Empire clearing out the corruptor strongholds in various cities. Every time it arrived over a city, the Empire's fleet would use close-in defense guns to sweep the corruptor's self-sunk ships in the city. Many corruptors who didn't have time to dodge were blown to pieces by shells. Okay, let's go to the supply point. Ho-Yun saw that the corruptor spaceships on the ground had been almost cleared, and ordered the fleet to fly to the supply point. A few hours later, the Empire's fleet flew to the area where the supply ships were docked. Thousands of supply ships that had been waiting for a long time took off and came to the top of the Empire's fleet. The mechanical arms under the supply ships kept busy on each warship, removing the warship's artillery storm launcher and storing it in the body for loading. The corruptor fleet in space watched the Empire's fleet replenishment but was helpless and could only stare blankly in orbit. The helpless corruptors could only mobilize the corruptor troops on the ground to rush to the supply point. However, since the Empire's troops on the ground had already cleared the corruptors around the supply point, leaving a safe isolation zone with a radius of 500 kilometers, it would take more than 7 hours for the corruptors outside the isolation zone to rush to the supply point. In these 7 hours, the Empire's fleet had already completed the supply. Sink 10,000 warships. Knock them down from the sky? The corruptor commander gritted his teeth and drew out a small fleet of 10,000 warships from the fleet. 10,000 corruptor warships separated from the fleet and accelerated towards the ground of the ring world. A moment later, the 10,000 corruptor warships rushed through the light film of the ring world and rushed towards the top of the Imperial fleet. Ho-Yun, The commander of the Imperial fleet saw that the situation was not good and hurriedly ordered the warships to maneuver and evade. However, the speed of the corruptor fleet was too fast. The thrusters at the tail of their warships were spraying wildly. They came with the idea of exchanging lives for lives. Seeing that the corruptor fleet still had a certain ability to change lanes in the atmosphere, and the possibility of their own warships dodging was not very high, Ho Yun decisively ordered the supply ships that had completed the supply mission to rush up to block the gun. The supply ship that was ordered to block the gun did not hesitate at all, turned its bow and flew into the air. A few minutes later, the corruptor fleet that fell from the sky collided with the Imperial supply fleet. Only then did people get to see the corruptor warships attack. Both warships that collided with each other were severely deformed, but the corruptor warships, because of their special energy-absorbing tissue, were much less deformed than the Imperial warships. The corruptor warship, which had turned red, wrapped its countless huge tentacles around the Imperial supply ship. As the corruptor warship's tentacles exerted a little force, the entire supply ship made a harsh metal deformation sound. The shield on the Imperial warship did not play any role because the corruptor's attack was a close attack. As the corruptor warship exerted more and more force, all its tentacles became taut. The bound Imperial supply ship was completely deformed with a continuous tearing sound. The entire supply ship was strangled into a ball of twisted metal by the tentacles, and because of the broken keel, the supply ship began to disintegrate from the twisted state. Dozens of huge spaceship wreckage slid from the corruptor tentacles to the ground. However, the corruptor warship suddenly reached out and grabbed several huge modules back to itself. What are they going to do? Li Mingze looked at the strange behavior of the corruptor warship on the holographic screen and was puzzled. Your Majesty, they want to obtain the reactor and anti-gravity engine modules in our supply ship, Tianyi exclaimed after checking the data of the supply ship and comparing them. Although they are using the thrusters to slow down, there is only more than a minute left before they hit the ground. They want to equip our anti-gravity engine within this minute. Tianyi kept calculating various data. It's okay, let them use it. Li Mingze suddenly showed a mysterious smile at the corner of his mouth. Tianyi, who was familiar with Li Mingze, immediately knew that he had another bad idea. At this time, in the sky above the ring world, the tentacles of the 6,000 corruptor warships that had obtained the anti-gravity modules of the Imperial supply ship wrapped around the wreckage of the spacecraft suddenly deformed and penetrated into the wreckage. As the tentacles that penetrated the wreckage turned light blue, the speed of the corruptor warships that had obtained the anti-gravity modules suddenly slowed down, until they gradually stopped in the sky. The thousands of other warships that did not obtain the anti-gravity modules could only fall headlong into the open space where the Imperial fleet dodged, passing by the Imperial warships. There were bursts of loud noises, and the thousands of corruptor warships that hit the ground were deeply embedded in the ground under the huge impact force, leaving only the tentacles of the spacecraft waving weakly in the air. Incredible, this corruptor was able to start and connect our equipment to the grid so quickly. Li Mingze looked at the corruptor floating in the air and smacked his lips. Okay, Tianyi, turn off all the anti-gravity devices. Li Mingze's mouth curled up a sneer. Connecting to the anti-gravity device, connection completed, self-destruction. As Tianyi's eyes flashed with data streams, the 6,000 incubator warships that were quietly floating in the air suddenly fell down like lead blocks. Tens of seconds later, these corruptor warships followed the footsteps of the previous 4,000 warships and fell to the ground. Let the ground forces come to deal with these ships that have no power to resist. The Imperial fleet will immediately take off and give the corruptors a surprise attack. Li Mingze nodded with satisfaction as he looked at the corruptor warships embedded in the ground. The Imperial warships that had been scattered due to maneuvering and evading gathered together again, and under the action of the thrusters at the lower bow, they aimed their bows at the corruptor fleet that was following them in orbit. With the power of the thrusters at the rear of the warships, all the warships rushed into the orbit like sharp arrows. All warships keep a moderate distance. No matter how these Imperial warships attack, do not evade on a large scale. Their attack is a one-time attack. The supply ships on the ground have been destroyed by us. They have only one way out, which is to rush out of the ring world and return to the planet for supply. All warships will hold them back for a while. Don't let any of them go, the corruptor commander said viciously as he looked at the Imperial fleet that was rising rapidly on the holographic screen. All warships, open fire. When the Imperial fleet was about to approach the atmosphere, Ho Yun decisively gave the fleet the order to open fire. Chapter 268, Dismissal on the Spot. Countless shells flew out of the barrels, passing through the atmosphere and the light film of the ring world and flying towards the fleet of the corruptors. Because the corruptor warships tend to use a special fighting method of close combat to obtain enemy equipment, the interception formation of the corruptor fleet is very dense. The commander of the corruptor has long been mentally prepared to sacrifice 100,000 warships to keep the Imperial fleet here. Tens of millions of shells passed through the atmosphere and rushed into the corruptor fleet, blasting countless corruptor warships into flesh and blood and debris all over the sky. Now, the warships behind will go up and intercept the Imperial fleet here, Panki, the commander of the corruptor, ordered loudly after seeing the Imperial fleet finish firing. At this time, Ho-Yun in the Imperial fleet also issued a series of instructions to the Imperial warships. All personnel should find fixed objects nearby and prepare to face weightlessness, Ho-Yun said, and fastened the safety belt around his waist tightly. After confirming that the fixation was completed, Ho-Yun connected the communication with all the warship captains. All warships, turn off the thrusters and free fall. Originally, Mingze's plan was to sacrifice the destroyers in the fleet to protect the battleships and cruisers, which took a long time to build and had high costs, and return to the Empire. However, Ho-Yun couldn't bear to let the soldiers in the destroyers in the fleet sacrifice themselves. After a mental struggle, he chose to temporarily change the battle plan. Although it was different from the original plan, all the warships chose to obey Ho-Yun's orders. The thrusters at the tail of the Imperial warships that were about to break out of the atmosphere suddenly shut down, and the warships that were rushing upward stopped abruptly and fell to the ground. The huge inertia tore the keel and walls of the Imperial warships, making bursts of harsh sounds. Because of the sudden inertia in the warships, the soldiers who did not hold on to the fixed objects were thrown out, but because they were all wearing power armor, the damage was limited. All ships adjust their posture. Reignite. Ho-Yun's body was suspended in the air due to inertia, but was tightly buckled to the seat by the seat belt. Although this posture made him uncomfortable, he still gave orders calmly. After receiving the order, the thrusters on the sides of the ships began to work frantically, turning the warships around. Then, when they were close to the ground, the thrusters under the bow lifted the bow, and the thrusters at the rear of the warships suddenly exerted force to make the warships rub against the ground and jump back into the air. The corruptor fleet in orbit was dumbfounded. This Empire's fleet did not play by the rules. Stop them for me, I don't believe how they can get up without weapons and ammunition. In addition, send 100,000 warships to guard between several planets of the Sith Empire and the ring world for me. If a supply ship comes out, we will blow it up. Panki was so angry that his teeth itched. There were nearly 1 million corruptor warships, but now there are only more than 600,000 left. The Empire did not lose even a single warship, and the only loss was 6,000 supply ships. 100,000 warships will stay here, and the remaining 400,000 warships will follow me. Let's take this opportunity to demolish their homeland. The commander of the corruptors showed a sinister smile and commanded the separated 400,000 warships to fly towards the 4 planets of the Empire. At this time, Ho-Yun in the ring world had realized that he had made a fatal mistake. Now his side had no ammunition and could not break through the blockade of the corruptors, and the Empire's mobile forces were all allocated to the Thunder Fleet. In other words, the 4 planets of the Empire now have no mobile defense forces, and the orbital artillery alone cannot withstand the enemy's attack. We must rush back to the Empire. Ho-Yun was extremely anxious at this time. He did not expect that his momentary softness would cause such a big trouble for the Empire. Ho-Yun, what a good thing you did. According to the plan, if all the destroyers were sacrificed, the Empire fleet would be able to return safely, but now you have wasted a great opportunity to break through, and you captains actually listened to his temporary change of plan. Do you have brains? Mingze's angry figure appeared on the holographic screens of all warships. Your Majesty, the officers and soldiers on the destroyer are all good guys. I don't want them to die like this. A commander must be decisive and resolute. Being soft-hearted is the worst thing to do in a cruel war. Ho-Yun also knew that his defense was so pale and powerless. His voice slowly lowered and he could not speak anymore. Waste. Do you know that what you have done has put the entire Empire's tens of billions of people in danger? If the Corruptor's fleet is allowed to eliminate all the orbital defense modules of the 4 planets, our 4 planets will be exposed to the enemy's orbital bombardment. The tens of billions of people on the 4 planets are in danger because of your small change. Mingze was so angry that he cursed. Why do some people just don't understand that some people are destined to sacrifice for the overall situation? These people's sacrifices are for a larger collective. Their sacrifices are valuable. If they don't sacrifice, they will still die after their home planet is destroyed. Hoyun, you are guilty of disobeying orders, forming a faction without authorization, and threatening the safety of civilization. Do you know your crimes? Li Mingze glared at Hoyun's eyes. Your Majesty, I know my crime. I feel sorry for the people of the Empire, Hoyun cried and knelt on the ground. Hoyun, 3 crimes are punished together, and all your positions are dismissed on the spot. The guards took him to the isolation cell of the warship, waiting to be sent back to the Empire to be sent to the military court for trial. All warship captains will be demoted on the spot, and the deputy captain will be promoted to captain. The next fleet will be commanded by me personally. Li Mingze hung up the communication after saying this. 2 soldiers came forward and supported Hoyun, who was kneeling on the ground. Captain, come with us, we won't embarrass you, the 2 soldiers said to Hoyun. Yes, Hoyun nodded and stood up, and was taken to the isolation cell by the 2 soldiers. Just when Hoyun walked to the bridge gate, Li Mingze opened the gate and walked in, passing Hoyun. Your Majesty, I was wrong. At this moment, Hoyun seemed to have aged by dozens of years, and his face showed deep fatigue. I will order the court to give you a lighter sentence. Go home and take a walk to relax. Li Mingze shook his head regretfully and walked into the bridge. Welcome, Your Majesty. Many officers in the bridge hurriedly stood up and saluted, not daring to breathe. After all, the fact that a fleet commander was dismissed and sent to prison on the spot was too shocking for them. I will personally command the fleet below. All warships listen. Target the wreckage area of the ring world, full speed ahead. Li Mingze sat in Hoyun's command position and waved his hand. The warships of the Imperial fleet turned their bows and headed towards the damaged area of the ring world. Your Majesty, why do we have to go to the damaged area of the ring world? An officer asked, puzzled. Look at this. Li Mingze waved his hand and released the image of the damaged area of the ring world. I saw countless huge scaffoldings in the damaged area of the ring world collapse disorderly on the metal surface, and the huge scaffoldings were filled with various large and small caves. And huge deep pits appeared from time to time on the metal ground, and no one knew where they led to underground. Chapter 269, Invasion of the New Home Planet. We can use these obstacles to avoid the tracking of the corruptor fleet, and the huge mass of the ring world itself can prevent the corruptors who are not equipped with anti-gravity engines from approaching. We only need to fly through these caves to the other side of the 4 planets of the Empire, and we may be able to rush back to New Star. A highlighted line appeared on the holographic screen in front of Li Mingze. After sending the line to the ships of the Imperial fleet, the warships began to adjust their formations and lined up in a long straight line. The corruptor squadron in orbit responsible for monitoring the Imperial fleet was puzzled by the Empire's changing formations. They couldn't figure out what the Imperial fleet was trying to do. Just as the Imperial fleet was about to reach the damaged ring world, Penki, who led 400,000 warships, had already arrived near the orbit of the new home planet. The defense modules on the new home planet orbit were spinning frantically, trying to keep themselves within the effective shooting angle of the corruptor fleet. Penki, who was observing the operating rules of the new home planet orbital defense modules, smiled contemptuously. The movement of these orbital modules relies on the magnetic energy track at the bottom. This backward operation method makes the movement speed of these orbital turrets very slow. If his fleet accelerates to the fastest speed, these orbital defense modules will not be able to adjust in time. At that time, as long as they enter the blind spot of these defense modules, their fleet can easily take them down. Thinking of this, Penki couldn't help but reveal a sinister smile. At this time, on the surface of the Empire's new home planet, the shrill air defense alarm sounded in various parts of the city. People hurriedly carried their belongings and went to the refuge center located underground on the planet through the emergency passage in the building. At the same time, the squares and open spaces in various cities were lifted up and separated to both sides, and huge anti-aircraft artillery rose from the ground. These anti-aircraft artillery were originally used to attack asteroids after the orbital defense modules were damaged. After entering the new starting point system, these anti-orbital weapons were useless. Unexpectedly, they came in handy now. My lord, what should we do? A group of officers in the new home planet command center asked Tianyi, who was standing in the center of the command room. I am trying to mobilize all orbital defense modules, but the speed of the corruptor is too fast. In 10 minutes, they will fly out of our shooting angle." Tianyi frowned. "Can't we use the defense systems of the other 3 planets?" They didn't understand why Tianyi didn't use the defense systems of the other 3 planets to help New Home Planet. The direction these corruptors are flying is facing the ring world, and New Home Planet just helps them block the shooting line of sight of the other 3 planets. Tianyi shook his head, and a huge 3-dimensional projection appeared in the control room. Among them, a huge fleet next to the huge blue planet representing New Home Planet rushed towards the back of the ring world. It can be seen that as the corruptor fleet gets closer to the back of New Home Planet, the defense modules on other planets gradually can't see the corruptor fleet that has hidden in the shadow. We don't know when our fleet will be able to get back. If the fleet can arrive in time, they will definitely be able to repel them," an officer sighed. "Don't worry, His Majesty has personally led the fleet back." Tianyi gave everyone a reassuring look. At this time, the corruptor fleet has flown into the shadow on the back of New Home Planet, and the orbital defense module of New Home Planet has not yet been transferred to a position where it can attack it. After seeing that the Empire's orbital platform failed to just in time, the corruptor fleet dived close to the planetary shield of the New Home Planet and flew towards the defense module that was moving not far away. The flying tentacles could occasionally touch the planetary shield made of biological armor. "Lord Tianyi, they are approaching our orbital defense module, but we have no weapons other than missiles to hit them," the officer said nervously as he watched the corruptor fleet approaching on the holographic screen. At this time, the corruptor fleet had already flown to the outermost defense platform, and countless tentacles swarmed out of the warships. The weapons on the platform were spinning frantically, trying to aim at the corruptor warships parallel to the platform, but this situation was not considered when it was designed. These frantically spinning turrets were just doing useless work. The tentacles of the corruptor warships stretched out and rolled the rotating turrets into their hands one by one, and gently exerted force. The seemingly solid turrets were easily twisted off the platform by these tentacles, and as the tentacles were thrown outward, these twisted turrets floated into space. After throwing out the turret, these tentacles then swept to the next turret. Not long after, the turrets on the entire defense platform were cleared. Then the corruptor warship extended its tentacles deep into the defense platform, slowly pulled up the entire platform, and flew into space, while the spaceship behind it continued to extend its tentacles to the next turret. "Lord Tianyi, they are dismantling our orbital defense system." If this continues, many officers looked a little ugly. On the holographic screen in front of them, the orbital defense module covering 1/3 of the surface of the New Home Planet was being peeled off from the back of the New Home Planet by the corruptors bit by bit. The situation is very critical. According to their speed, our modules can only last for 3 days. Tianyi came up with this data after some calculations. It's really frustrating. Knowing that these modules will be dismantled in the end, they can't be moved to the inside of the 4 planets to cover each other. Having these modules for the corruptors to disassemble can also divert their attention and buy more precious time for the arrival of the Imperial fleet. If they are pushed to the limit and drop nuclear weapons on the New Home Planet, then the Empire's many years of operation on the New Home Planet will be reduced to ruins. The natural environment of the New Home Planet will no longer be suitable for human habitation, and the residents in the underground shelters may also be harmed by the drilling weapons. This is absolutely unacceptable to Tianyi, so she can only choose not to provoke the corruptor fleet and try to prevent it from carrying out orbital bombing on the New Home Planet until the Imperial fleet arrives. At this time, the Imperial fleet, led by Mingze, has flown to the edge of the intact habitable area of the ring world. Behind the huge light film wall in front is the ring world damage area, full of huge debris. Release the drones and speed up. The situation on the New Home Planet is not optimistic. We must hurry back. Mingze turned on the communicator and shouted. One after another, the detection drones were launched from the warships and flew towards the messy wreckage area of the ring world, and the Imperial fleet followed closely behind. Tens of seconds later, the flagship that Mingze was on rushed through the light film of the ring world and entered a chaotic wreckage area. The Imperial battleship that had just passed through the light film collided head-on with a huge fallen piece of debris. Chapter 270 Mysterious Mist. Fortunately, the flagship's shield blocked the impact of the collapsed debris. The kinetic energy brought by the huge debris caused the shield of Mingze's flagship to flicker continuously, and it was close to the edge of collapse. Your Majesty, Our shield is only 0.53% left. An officer wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Order the fleet to stop advancing, shut down all unnecessary energy-consuming devices on the warships, and concentrate the energy on the shield-charging device. Li Mingze nodded calmly. As the flagship of the Imperial fleet stopped in place, a long line of warships behind the flagship also stopped. The lights on the flagship gradually dimmed and the flickering of the shield disappeared. Tens of minutes later, the Imperial flagship, with its shield energy refilled, flew into the wreckage again, and the warships behind it followed closely. The corruptor warships in orbit watched helplessly as the Imperial fleet they were staring at disappeared in a long line in a pile of charred metal wreckage. The huge gravity of the ring world made them dare not fly into the wreckage easily. If they followed in, there would only be one result, that is, like a fish jumping onto the shore, they would be unable to move and die of thirst on the ground. After waiting for another 10 minutes, the corruptors who found that the Imperial fleet had not yet emerged scattered to see if they could find the shadow of the Imperial ship that might pass by among the many wreckages. At this time, the Imperial fleet was not doing well. The wreckage had been damaged for many years, and with the passage of time, it was exposed to various cosmic rays. The gaps in these wreckages became extremely fragile. The wreckage would collapse at the slightest disturbance. Unfortunately, the jets used by the Imperial fleet often blew on some already fragile wreckages. The warships that had already flown over were fine, but the warships behind were in constant trouble. They could only rely on the warship pilot's superb driving skills and rich experience to flexibly dodge these fallen metal buildings. Otherwise, they would rely on the warship's shield to withstand the impact, and as for using close-in defense weapons to smash the fallen wreckage, the explosions would probably attract the attention of the corruptors in orbit. In fact, they didn't know that because the blue light caused by the warship's shield being hit was too dazzling, the corruptor fleet in orbit had already discovered the traces of the Imperial fleet. The corruptors who wanted to surprise the Imperial fleet did not approach, but launched a small reconnaissance spacecraft, quietly following the flashing lightning. The main force of the corruptor fleet quietly followed behind the small spacecraft. The Imperial fleet, which knew nothing about this, was still moving forward cautiously, but soon a thick yellow fog in front blocked the Imperial fleet's way forward. Your Majesty, there is an energy fog formed by an unknown energy in front of us, which blocks the signal we scan. An officer frowned and looked at the holographic screen in front of him. Send a drone in to take a look, Li Mingze waved his hand. Then, a small drone rushed into the energy fog 50 meters 100 meters 500 meters. Sir, the drone has lost its signal. The last distance it disappeared was 500 meters, the autopilot mode set in the drone should have been triggered. If the drone is still safe, it will return to its original route, the soldier in charge of controlling the drone reported. Before he finished speaking, the missing drone reconnected with a warship. Sir, the overall integrity of the drone is 100%. The energy fog is safe. It just blocks our communication signals and scanning beams. Hearing this, everyone in the bridge breathed a sigh of relief. If there is danger in the energy fog, it will not be so convenient for their warship to reverse. However, we cannot take it lightly. Who knows what dangers may be in the energy fog? Release all drones and fighters to guard around the fleet, and all warships will be at the lowest speed. Li Mingze pinched his temples in some distress. If they move forward at this snail's pace, the Sith Empire will have been destroyed by the time they get out. I just hope that Tianyi can see that the situation is not right and make an emergency jump. Although emergency jumps are extremely unstable and very dangerous when entering hyperspace, and they will drift in hyperspace for dozens of days to months, and they may even disappear in hyperspace. But disappearing in hyperspace is disappearing in hyperspace, which is better than being treated as a human beast by the corrupted and destroying the country. He still has 4 arcs, and the foundation of civilization is still there. I don't know how big the energy fog in front is, but I hope it is smaller so that I can get back in time. After all, the Sith Star and the Earth are too important to him. All warships and the rear ships enable wired connection. Li Mingze suddenly thought of something. If wired connection is not used, the effective communication distance between warships is only a few seconds of the slowest speed of the warship. With such a huge weight of the warship, this short distance is definitely not enough for emergency braking. It would be interesting to have a super chain rear-end collision at that time. Wired communication starts to connect, and the maximum connection distance between the two ships is 1 kilometer. Following Li Mingze's order, a drone pulled a fist-thick communication cable and flew towards the warship behind. All the warships are equipped with wired communication devices for this special situation, and the maximum distance can reach 10 kilometers. Soon all the warships were connected in a long line through cables. After the connection was completed, the leading warship sailed into the energy fog under the protection of the drone, and the flagship followed closely. 10 hours later, the huge energy fog had not yet reached the end. Mingze frowned as he looked at the yellow world outside the warship's porthole. They had been in this yellow world for 10 hours, and they had advanced more than 7,000 kilometers in the energy fog. In these more than 7,000 kilometers, they did not encounter any attacks, and even the common building collapses along the way did not happen. Although there were some turns and ups and downs along the way, they were dull. Without the scanning of the scanning device, the sonar detector carried by the drone could ensure that the warship would not hit the wall. After having the energy fog medium, the sonar on the drone played a huge role, and the three-dimensional view of the surrounding environment was drawn after continuous cross-detection. Looking at the neatly arranged buildings around him, Mingze felt like he was in a corridor. If it weren't for the huge intersections that appeared from time to time, he would have thought he had walked into a trap. Your Majesty, the gravity we are currently experiencing is decreasing, a soldier suddenly exclaimed. The Yangsha who was dismissed and imprisoned on the spot was changed to Hoyun. My bad. I got dizzy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Mysterious Hall. Oh? Aren't we always on the horizontal line? Mingze was puzzled. Could it be that the back of the position they were in was blown off by the explosion? Otherwise, why would the gravity decrease? Sir, our guide device and horizontal device may have been affected. We are always descending. The soldier called up the curve chart of the warship's gravity. No wonder I feel that I am getting lighter. Mingze threw the command staff in his hand into the air and weighed it with his hand. Sure enough, the command staff has become 1/3 lighter. Your Majesty. The Pathfinder warship in front of us found that the energy fog has disappeared. The communications officer turned his head in surprise. Oh, Mingze stood up excitedly. Sure enough, his flagship also sailed out of the yellow energy fog in a short while. The yellow world outside the porthole turned into a metal hall with flashing blue light. If you look from the air, you will find that the huge battleship of 1,200 meters in this blue metal hall is like a pencil in the Great Hall of the People. The originally huge battleship is so small in this hall that it is incredible. Mingze stood in front of the holographic screen window of the bridge in shock, looking at the huge metal world in front of him. Incredible, is this the structure under the ground of the ring world? Mingze once again felt that the civilization that built the ring world was so great that it could actually build such a super building. Because before colonizing the new starting point ring world, after scanning the huge mineral deposits 150 kilometers deep underground, he could only scan a complete hole. At first, Mingze thought that the huge main body was just a filler used to increase gravity, and it was some huge useless materials. Now it seems that this is not the case at all. It is possible that the bottom of the habitable ring world area is also composed of these countless huge buildings and passages, but they are blocked by these existences similar to energy fog. Your Majesty, there is a huge platform in front. An officer suddenly pointed to the ground below the front of the battleship. Sure enough, on the ground hundreds of kilometers away from the battleship, a huge platform with a diameter of 500 kilometers protruded. This platform, which is at least 200 kilometers high, is divided into 50 layers from bottom to top. Each platform has 360 huge corridors extending outwards, and the length of each corridor is at least 100 kilometers. From the perspective of the flagship, it looks like a huge cake with dense candles on all sides except the top. The top platform of this platform only extends a 50-kilometer long structure, similar to the landing platform. Where are we going to land? Mingze pointed at the landing platform in the distance and ordered. The Imperial warships that passed through the energy fog cut off the wired connection and flew towards the platform on the ground of the metal hall. After dozens of minutes, the flagship's bow thruster began to spray light, adjusting the flagship to be parallel to the landing platform. You wait in the air, we will go down and take a look. Mingze ordered the flagship to slowly land on the platform, and the surrounding warships opened their close-in defense weapons to prevent possible accidents. with the 10 huge landing gears at the bottom of the flagship supporting the ground. The flagship landed steadily in the center of the landing platform. There was a sound of exhaust, and the lower deck of the flagship opened down and landed on the ground. Li Mingze drove down from the deck in an open-top off-road vehicle for interstellar exploration, followed by 10 Wolf Spider armored vehicles. Air content 0, do not expose directly to vacuum. As the system alarm sounded, Li Mingze closed the roof of the off-road vehicle and released oxygen inside the car. Looking at the platform that seemed to have no end, Li Mingze suddenly stepped on the accelerator, and the tail thruster of the off-road vehicle suddenly sprayed flames and drove towards the center of the platform. Just in the air, Li Mingze found a bulge similar to a control console in the center of the top platform, and his target was that console. After a few hours, Li Mingze stepped on the brakes and let the off-road vehicle drift in an arc and stopped next to the control console in the center of the platform. Li Mingze got out of the car and came to the dusty control console. As he waved his hand to wipe off the dust, a control panel flashing blue light was revealed. How do I use this thing? Li Mingze reached out to the control console in confusion, but a blue light suddenly rose from the console, wrapped around his hand, and went up along his arm. Just as he was about to cut off the connection with his body, the blue light stopped in front of his shoulder and only wrapped around his arm. Exclamation mark. At number 1% and amp, percent. Language module loading. Language module loading completed. Civilization dictionary imported completed. Language name, Chinese. Complexity, simple. Species scan completed. Category, mammal. Intelligence level, intermediate. Civilization body evolution level, low. Civilization technology level, low. Meet the requirements for level 3 permissions. The ecological maintenance device for the species is activated. As this line of information was displayed, the entire huge metal room began to vibrate slightly. Rows of huge air outlets began to appear on the 4 walls of the hall. The originally flat ground also rose up with huge pillars shaped like air conditioners. The ceiling of the hall also lowered pillars that were the same as the ground. The analysis of the air composition required by the species has been completed and is being prepared. Nitrogen, 78%, oxygen, 21%, carbon dioxide, 0.03%, water and impurities, 0.03%, remaining gases, 0.94% start releasing air. As the subtitles disappeared again, the extended vents and pillars began to spray air out frantically. In just half an hour, the entire hall was filled with air with the same composition as the Earth, and Li Mingze's power armor environmental monitoring system also lit up the green light. Li Mingze put away the helmet on his head with a look of shock. Welcome to the maintenance platform of the 0013A area in the second area of God's Ring. Self-checking of area 0013A. The damage degree of area 0013A is 42.1% and the automatic repair system is underway. Because the automatic system lacks available materials, the repair work has stopped a million years ago and all maintenance robots have been scrapped. Check the remaining devices. There are 13,000 available inventory maintenance drones. Please issue orders. Only level 3 authority commands are allowed. The familiar Chinese of Li Mingze floated out of the platform. Maintenance platform? Such a big room is a maintenance platform. Li Mingze's face was full of shock. He originally thought that this was some kind of central control hall, but he didn't expect it to be just a maintenance room. Describe to me the functions that the maintenance platform can still use now, Li Mingze said to the platform with an extremely excited tone. Self-checking in progress. The platform has intact functional modules. 1. Maintenance drone control module 2. Maintenance drone maintenance and loading and unloading platform 3. Parts manufacturing module 4. Platform defense module 5. Log recording module 6. Technical warehouse module. Among them, the platform defense module belongs to level 2 permissions, and you are not authorized to use it. The technical warehouse module is a callable terminal that requires level 2 permissions. Chapter 272 The Origin of the Ring World. The platform defense module is a level 2 permission, you are not authorized to use it. The technical warehouse module is a callable terminal that requires a level 2 permission. The material transfer module used for manufacturing has been damaged and cannot transfer materials. The manufacturing module cannot be activated. The mechanical voice of the console sounded. Oh? What do level 2 and level 1 permissions mean? Li Mingze was very curious why there was a distinction between permissions. Do you want to open the level manual? Yes, Li Mingze nodded. Level 3 permission refers to the permission that can be used by level 3 civilization races that cannot directly participate in the war and are only responsible for logistics. Level 2 permission that can be used by level 2 civilization races that directly participate in the war. Level 1 permission that can be used by level 1 civilizations that are frontline organizers. After reading the data, you belong to a level 3 civilization that is not recorded. The page on the console switched again. War? Open the log record. Li Mingze frowned, as if he had a vague sense of the reason for the damage to the ring world. Opening the log information, translating the log in 1348, the first year of Zend, the Zerg gained a foothold in the Milky Way. Their territory was constantly expanding, and countless civilizations were swallowed up by the Zerg. Our civilization fled here on a spaceship and became the civilization responsible for logistics for the Zerg Resistance Alliance. In 1458, the first year of Zend, after more than 100 years of war, the front line of the Zerg Resistance Alliance was constantly retreating, and more civilizations fled to the headquarters of the Alliance, the Ring of God. As the Zerg territory continued to expand, the resources we could obtain became extremely limited. As many as 80% of the rare metal minerals used to build warships were in the occupied areas. More than 100 second-level civilizations and 13 first-level civilizations responsible for fighting were already unable to build warships. We may not be able to hold on for much longer. In 1660, the first year of Zend, after 200 years of desperate resistance, our resistance alliance was still compressed into a small area of 1 million cubic light-years. This 1 million cubic light-year area was crowded with more than 100,000 third-level civilizations and more than 200 second-level civilizations who had fled. In order to build battleships, the Alliance has begun to dismantle the refugee spacecraft of each civilization to refine the metals needed to build warships. We have no way out and must fight the Zerg to the death. In 1720, the first year of Zend, the Alliance was doomed, and our fleet was completely wiped out in the Zerg starfield. Without the protection of the fleet, we are just fat meat in the mouth of the Zerg, relying on the fortresses. It all depends on when they start to eat. On February 3, 1728, the first year of Zend, the Zerg gathered a large force to attack the Alliance. We relied on the ring world to carry out the final defense. On March 1, 1728, the first year of Zend, the ring world has fallen. The Zerg has captured 8 ring world divisions. We are now in the last remnant of the Alliance. On March 2, 1728, the first year of Zend, we can no longer resist, and the Zerg have come in. This record represents the complete demise of the entire galactic civilization. I hope that those who can see this information later can organize a joint organization against the Zerg as soon as possible. Don't wait like us until the Zerg occupies half of the galaxy before you think of uniting and following the footsteps of our generation of civilization. In the last bit of time, I will record the weaknesses of the Zerg we know. The log stopped abruptly at the word. It seems that the staff member who wrote the log had encountered misfortune before he finished writing. Seeing this, Li Mingze's face was like a piece of black charcoal. Another Zerg appeared in the inexplicable universe, and this Zerg also wiped out all the civilizations in the Milky Way. No, it should be eaten up. This can explain why there were no creatures on the ring world at the beginning. It seems that all the movable ones have been digested. It is estimated that these plants also grew later. The attacked ring world could not have evolved creatures in just a few million years. Damn it, Li Mingze punched the console hard. Are you kidding me? Originally, a pilgrim civilization, a corruptor civilization, an artificial intelligence civilization, a hyperspace corrupted anti-sane civilization, and the broken Davis Security Council were already SSS level hell mode. Now there is another Zerg that once swept across the Milky Way. This is simply the 18th level of hell mode. Li Mingze can't see any bright future, and the front of the Empire is shrouded in a cloud of black fog. Your Majesty, our top priority is to get rid of the corruptor civilization that is attacking the new home planet, a soldier behind Li Mingze reminded him. Yes, let's solve the current problem first. Control console, enable the drone control module. Li Mingze came back to his senses and said to the console. The maintenance drone control module is loading. The maintenance drone control authority has been obtained. Please obtain the mobilization device. After the console said this, a real blue bracelet suddenly appeared on the blue screen. Yes, it's a real bracelet, not an image. This is amazing. Li Mingze reached out and picked up the bracelet and put it on his hand. As soon as the bracelet was put on his wrist, it tightened and was firmly fixed on Li Mingze's wrist. Then, a blue light curtain appeared in front of Li Mingze, and the light curtain showed the three-dimensional view of the maintenance drone storage area. In this huge warehouse of repaired drones, there is only one corner left with 13,000 drones, which account for less than 1% of the entire warehouse. Li Mingze enlarged this small corner until the full picture of the repaired drones appeared. These drones are like huge metal discs placed on the shelves of the warehouse, but the edges of these discs are extremely sharp. Is this a repaired drone? Li Mingze couldn't believe it. How can such a big disc be repaired? All drones start, as his idea just came up. 13,000 drones began to flash blue lights, and soon they flew from the shelves where they were placed and flew towards the exit of the warehouse. The drone has three modes, namely cutting mode, used to cut the damaged parts of the open loop world, welding mode, the magnetic field welding gun can weld various metals seamlessly together, load-bearing mode. The tractor beam can move parts that far exceed the weight of the drone to the position where they need to be replaced. A control instruction appeared on the bracelet. Cutting mode, Li Mingze's mind moved, and the edge of the drone that just flew from the passage to Li Mingze's head began to glow blue. Scheduled release, there may be delays. Chapter 273, Heaven-Defying Drone. Oh? Cut this floor. Li Mingze used his mind to control a drone to fly out and cut towards the ground not far from him. With a disc-shaped drone turning sideways, it easily sank into the floor as a whole. The drone that sank into the ground flew out again in the blink of an eye, and at this time, a small piece of the floor had been neatly cut off. Li Mingze ordered several soldiers to stand up the cut floor piece, and found that the cut side was as smooth as a mirror, as if it was not just cut, but had always been like this. Tisk 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 tisk, Li Mingze smacked his lips, ejected the beam energy sword from his arm, and then he stabbed the beam energy sword into the metal plate. After dozens of seconds, when he took the beam energy sword away, he found that there was only a shallow cut of less than 1 millimeter on the metal plate. You know, this is a special beam energy sword, and it has been stabbed for such a long time. If it was stabbed into the armor protecting the flagship bridge, it would definitely melt through half. But on this piece of metal, there was only such a shallow cut. It seems that the metal of this ring world is a good thing, and the maintenance drone is also a good thing. Even such a hard metal can be cut like tofu. If the parts manufacturing module is connected to our own material transfer system, can it manufacture parts? Li Mingze suddenly thought of something and asked the console. Yes, but the warship needs to dock with a platform. After the console said, docking devices extended outward from the corridors around the platform. All warships dock on the platform. Open the material transfer interface. Li Mingze ordered the fleet floating in the air. The many warships that received the order slowly descended and docked on both sides of the corridor, extending from the platform. As the docking device scanned the warship for a while, the original circular interface began to transform into a square Empire-specific interface. After the docking device was inserted into the warship, it began to flash blue light. The material transfer external module is successfully connected, and the parts manufacturing module is started. The walls around the hall turned outward to reveal huge printing workshops. Transfer the drawings of the mass acceleration shell loader to the manufacturing module. Li Mingze placed the smart terminal on his arm above the control platform, and countless data streams flashed in the air. Soon, the huge printing equipment around the hall began to work, and one shell loader after another began to take shape. Originally, it could also be manufactured on the shell battleship of the Shellstorm, but because of the special structure of this launcher, loading ammunition requires special machines, and such a huge loader cannot be manufactured by the manufacturing equipment carried on the battleship. So after losing the ammunition supply ship, the Imperial fleet could not replenish ammunition. But now with a newly manufactured loader, the Imperial fleet can give a big surprise to the corruptor fleet guarding outside. A few hours later, the transparent shield of the printing equipment opened, revealing the completed ammunition loader inside. Li Mingze waved his hand, and all the drones started the load-bearing mode and flew towards the ammunition loader. As the drones shot out blue tractor beams, the huge ammunition loader was hoisted into the air and flew towards the fleet. 2 hours later, all the battleships had replenished their shells and returned to the air. Let's go. We'll come back after we've dealt with the corruptor fleet, Li Mingze said as he boarded the SUV and drove toward the flagship. Led by the flagship, the Empire's fleet flew out toward the new exit that Li Mingze opened through the console. More than 10,000 drones had been loaded into the warehouses of each ship, waiting for the moment when they would be put to use. A few hours later, the Empire's fleet, which had taken a shortcut from the underground of the Ring World, arrived above the Ring World. The Corruptor fleet, which was looking for traces of the Empire's fleet, immediately surrounded them and rushed toward the Empire's fleet. In the flagship's bridge, Li Ming sneered and waved his hand to let all the warships open the warehouse doors. 13,000 drones rushed out of the cargo holds of the warships and scattered around. Seeing the flying disc drones, the Corruptors were not alert at all. Even if these drones were nuclear weapons, the power of such a small explosion would only damage 10,000 warships at most. However, they never expected that these drones were not made by the Empire, but relics from the previous generation of civilization. Under the control of Li Ming's mind, these scattered drones rushed into the more than 10,000 Corruptor warships, flying in front with blue light flashing on their edges. In a few seconds, these drones flew out from the tail of the Corruptor warships again. The red biological tissues of the Corruptor warships, which seemed to have not suffered much damage, gradually turned black and withered. In the end, the entire warship lost its vitality and continued to fly forward quietly by inertia, but its tentacles had been broken and disappeared in the universe. If you can see the inside of these Corruptor warships, you will find that the Corruptors controlling the warships have been cut in half along with the warship reactors, deader than dead. The biological tissues that have lost their controllers and energy supply are like cells that have left the human body, and they will soon wither and die. The Corruptors rushing towards the Imperial fleet from behind were frightened by the scene in front of them. In a few seconds, more than 10,000 of their fleets were destroyed, and these dead colleagues did not have any abnormalities before they died. No, it's those drones. Let's retreat. The commander of the temporary fleet responsible for monitoring the Imperial fleet hurriedly controlled the warship to turn around and run. But Li Ming's did not give them a chance. Looking at the holographic screen, he used his mind to control the drones to fly out from the tail of a warship like a string of pearls, and then sank into the head of the next warship. Li Ming's, who was gradually familiar with the control of drones, used them very well. After dozens of seconds, all the Corruptor warships lost their voices and slowly glided towards the Imperial fleet by inertia. Your Majesty, you are so awesome, everyone in the bridge applauded and flattered him. Ahem, keep a low profile, let's hurry back to the new home planet. Li Ming's coughed twice in a pretended serious manner. After retrieving the drones, the fleet suddenly accelerated and headed towards the new home planet. And those Corruptor warships that had lost their voices collided with each other by inertia, shattered into a pile of waste in the universe. And various equipment on the warships also drifted into the universe. The Corruptor commander Panki on the new home planet naturally noticed the signals of the 100,000 Corruptor warships that disappeared. However, he was quite confident in the strength of his own warships and did not think that these warships were destroyed. Chapter 274 arrived in time. They had never encountered a civilization that could destroy 100,000 Corruptor warships in 1 minute, and that could prevent them from even sending out distress signals. These warships must have entered an area that could block signals while tracking the Imperial warships and were unable to contact them. This kind of environment is very common in the universe. Hurry up and dismantle it. Soon we will be able to strip the tortoise shell of this planet, Panki shouted to the warships. Suddenly, tens of thousands of blue lights penetrated the fleet that was dismantling the orbital defense platform. What the hell is this? Panki looked at the drone that had sunk into the warship with a puzzled look. But soon he knew what these things were that flashed by so fast. As the drone passed through the rear of the warship, the Corruptor warship that was penetrated quickly withered, and the tentacles that bound the turrets were also broken into several sections in the air. Damn it, Panki suddenly thought of something. The more than 10,000 warships that were killed by drones just now didn't even have time to send out a distress signal. Is it the same for the 100,000 warships that disappeared? The 100,000 warships that were following the Imperial fleet have been killed by these drones emitting blue light. Panki's scalp suddenly felt numb when he thought of this possibility. All warships, retreat immediately. Panki hurriedly recalled all the warships and prepared to run away. But the drones did not mean to let them go. As the drones kept shuttling through the Corruptor fleet, the number of surviving Corruptor warships became fewer and fewer. 400,000 ships, 350,000 ships, 300,000 ships, 200,000 ships, 100,000 ships. Looking at the signs representing his own warships that kept going out, The heart of the corruptor commander Pan Ki was bleeding. Needless to say, even if he escaped by chance, he would be court-martialed. Just when he thought his fleet was about to be destroyed, he was surprised to find that the more than 10,000 drones that hid his own warships were actually bounced aside. Huh? What's going on? Li Mingze sat up straight in confusion. The drone's energy is exhausted, please recharge as soon as possible. A line of scarlet words suddenly appeared on the holographic screen in front of him. Are you kidding me? The service life of this is too short. It's only been used for a few hours. Li Mingze looked at the display in confusion. The cutting mode of the drone and its energy consumption can only be used without limit in the special energy environment of the ring world. Noticing Li Mingze's confusion, the bracelet took the initiative to explain. Special energy environment. Could it be the yellow energy fog before we entered the control room? Li Mingze said to himself. Yes, but the energy fog is caused by a leak in a reactor, resulting in too high energy density. The original energy fog is invisible to the naked eye, the bracelet explained again. Bad luck. Li Mingze sighed and looked at the drone that was no longer able to float in space. The corruptor commander Pan Ki was overjoyed when he saw that the drone that could kill their warships in seconds had lost its power. Get these drones for me, Pan Ki ordered loudly to many warships, thinking that being able to obtain such awesome technology would be enough to offset the guilt of losing almost the entire fleet due to his poor command. Li Mingze was shocked to see the corruptor warships reaching out to the drones floating in space. He couldn't let the corruptors get this technology, otherwise why would he fight? He just surrendered. All warships aim at the corruptor fleet, fire at full power. Li Mingze gritted his teeth. Even if he blew up the drones, he couldn't let these corruptors get away with it. Tens of millions of mass-accelerated shells left the launcher and headed towards the corruptor fleet. The corruptor warships that were salvaging drones were hit before they could turn around and run away. The huge kinetic energy shattered the shields of these warships, tore open the armor of the warships, and turned the corruptors into pieces of wreckage in the red flash. Damn it, Pan Ki was surprised to find that the Imperial fleet was fully stocked with ammunition. He hurriedly controlled the warships to fly backwards. After using his warships to block the attack, Pan Ki and the remaining 30,000 warships hurriedly retreated to the outer reaches of the galaxy. Sith Empire, you will be dead when our army arrives. After saying this, 30,000 corruptor warships and the 100,000 warships left between the ring world and the planets jumped into hyperspace and disappeared. Count the losses of drones. Looking at the wreckage of spacecraft floating in front of the fleet, Li Mingze couldn't help but feel a little heartbroken. Thousands of the Empire's own drones flew out of the fleet and went to the wreckage to find the preserved repair drones. Your Majesty, nearly 80% of the orbital buildings on the new home planet have been destroyed. The reconstruction of these orbital buildings requires a lot of time and resources. Tianyi's figure appeared beside Li Mingze. I know that the loss of these orbital platforms is nothing. We can build them ourselves. The maintenance drones of the previous generation of civilization are the most important, and these drones are not something we can manufacture now. We have never seen the materials used to make them, so these remaining drones will be the mainstay of our resistance to the fleet of the corruptor civilization. Li Mingze was a little anxious. He was waiting for the final result of the search. Your Majesty, we have found a total of 6,856 intact maintenance drones. A soldier in charge of salvage sent statistical information. More than 6,000, hey. Half of them are gone. Li Mingze sighed and shook his head, his expression a little gloomy. Your Majesty, the entire ring world is so big, there must not be only so many drones. If we look carefully, we will definitely find more. Tianyi put his hand on Li Mingze's shoulder and patted it gently. Although there was no real touch, Li Mingze still felt her kindness. Well, lift the alarms of all colonies and restore the normal operation of society. Once all the corruptors on the ring world are eliminated, we can continue to develop. Also, send troops to go deep into the wreckage of the ring world to see if there are any treasures that we haven't found yet. After discovering good things, seal them in place and don't allow anyone to approach. The same applies to the maintenance platform. Although Li Mingze believes in the loyalty of his people, he still has to be prepared for the worst with his cautious character. If someone obtains some technology left over from the previous civilization and breeds some inappropriate ideas, it will not be good. Yes. I will eliminate anyone who does something wrong. Tianyi nodded. Obviously, she also thought of this aspect like Li Mingze. As an existence that maintains Li Mingze's dictatorship, she will never allow anyone to threaten the imperial power. Any existence that threatens the imperial power will be eliminated by her in the bud. Every year, there are many officers and citizens in the empire who disappear or forge crimes and are imprisoned. The seemingly peaceful empire was actually turbulent, but before these waves formed, they were quietly flattened by Tianyi on the sea surface. It was precisely because of the omnipresent Tianyi that helped Mingze control the empire that the empire did not fall apart under such high pressure. At this time on the Ring World, the ground forces of the corruptors did not know that they had been abandoned. They could no longer receive any information, support, or communication from orbit. Chapter 275 Buried. The corrupted ground forces, who had lost the intelligence of the imperial forces, were like headless flies, unable to launch an offensive against the empire. They had no choice but to retreat to the cities they had already occupied. It's time to send out all the Sith warriors, and let the Empire's elite marines and heavy armored forces cooperate with them to quickly eliminate all these corrupted. Mingze returned to his blue brick office and put his legs on the desk. Tens of minutes later, a new batch of Sith warriors who had been prepared boarded the landing ship and flew towards the Ring World. As time went on, more and more new humans awakened the power of the Sith. The number of Sith warriors who had already entered service in the Empire had reached 10,000, and the number of Sith warriors who were training and studying in the academy was as high as more than 10,000. With so many Sith warriors, the Empire was finally able to use them as regular elite forces. After the landing ships carrying Sith warriors and the spacecraft carrying special warfare mechas and the Imperial Marines met in the Ring World, they dispersed to their respective divisions. The orbital airborne troops responsible for the response on the ground also drove out the Wolf Spider armored vehicles and mammoth tanks that had been transported to the Ring World from the underground vault. Elite troops composed of heavy armor, special warfare mechas, Imperial Marines, and Sith warriors were formed in various parts of the Ring World and headed towards major cities. The team was led by the mammoth tank, followed by the Wolf Spider armored vehicles, the Imperial Marines on both sides of the convoy, and the special warfare mechas at the outermost edge of the team. As for the Sith warriors, they were jumping rapidly in the buildings. The corrupted Marines, who encountered such an elite Imperial force for the first time, were defeated as soon as they came into contact with the Imperial elite forces. The second form they were proud of was just a shot in front of the heavy railgun of the mammoth tank. As long as they were touched by the shells of the mammoth tank, they would be blown into a ball of blood mist. The anti-light armor rail heavy machine guns on the armored vehicles and special warfare mechas also gave these big guys a headache. Once they were swept by these heavy machine guns, their energy absorption would reach the upper limit in less than 3 seconds, and then it would be a brutal time of tearing flesh. As for the soldiers of the Imperial Marines, they were responsible for dealing with the corrupted Marines who had not transformed and were flexible. The Sith warriors would occasionally jump into the enemy group and harvest the heads of these corrupted with beam energy swords. Under such a fierce attack by the Imperial forces, the corrupted's defense line kept shrinking and soon retreated to a small area in the center of major cities. After such a killing and abuse by the Imperial forces, the original more than 8 million corrupted Marines are now only less than 1 million. These more than 900,000 people hid in the huge buildings in the city center and dared not show their heads, which caused great trouble to the Imperial forces preparing to advance. Without the support of heavy weapons, it would be very difficult to rely on the Sith warriors to deal with these corrupted, and the Sith warriors might even be involved. The reason why it is so difficult to remove is that the remaining troops of the corruptors are almost all corruptor elites, except for a few soldiers who have never been on the battlefield. These corruptor elite officers have strong combat power that can fight against Sith warriors one-on-one, and the combat power of officers with higher ranks increases exponentially. In addition, these corruptor elites can also be invisible, which makes it impossible for the Sith warrior core of the Empire to show its strength. 3 days later, Your Majesty, our troops have been blocked in the city center for 3 days. The corruptor elite officers have formed several guerrillas and used the advantage of invisibility to harass and attack our troops. In these 3 days, our troops have achieved extremely limited results, and have lost as many as 1,200 Sith warriors and 5,000 Imperial Marines. Now the voices in the Empire calling for the auxiliary army to take over are getting louder and louder. An officer stood in front of Mingze's desk and bowed his head. 5,000 Marines and more than 1,000 Sith warriors. Are you all good for nothings? Mingze was so angry that he threw the pen holder on the table at the standing officer. I don't want the city centers of these dozens of cities anymore. Use orbital weapons to flatten these places for me, Mingze gritted his teeth and said viciously. Anyway, the useful materials and equipment in the city had been moved away during the evacuation. Now the city center is just some empty high-rise buildings. These buildings are not a problem for the Empire. It only takes a few months for these city centers to return to their original state. Your Majesty, the shield of the ring world will block orbital attacks, otherwise we will use fighter planes to drop atomic weapons. The officer thought of something. We can't use atomic weapons. It will pollute the environment too much. We can use high-energy rays. Send some battleships over quickly. Go down, you go and make arrangements. Mingze waved his hand. The officer saluted and stepped out of the office. 2 days later, dozens of battleships re-equipped with beam weapons flew into the surface of the ring world from orbit. After arriving above the cities occupied by the corruptors, they quietly hovered in the air. All ground forces begin to set up temporary shields. With the order from the commander of the operation, more than 300 huge pillars were inserted deep underground by special construction vehicles. The pillars exposed on the ground began to flash blue light, and soon a huge arc-shaped shield wall surrounded the city center. Should we start the cleanup operation? The captain of the battleship picked up the intercom and asked. Start the cleanup operation, the command center sent back a reply. Red light began to flash on the muzzles of the battleships. Begin to adjust the angle of the beam cannon and prepare to gather energy. All the beam cannons on the battleship began to rotate slightly and turned in one direction. The angle of the beam cannon is adjusted, and the attack begins. As the soldier in front of the console pressed the button, hundreds of beams of different sizes shot out from the battleship and gathered together in the air. The gathered energy beams rushed towards the city center, and a violent flash of light lit up, and a huge ball of light appeared in the center of the city. This ball of light was still expanding, and wherever the ball of light went, all the buildings and vehicles were turned into powder and dissipated in the air. The huge ball of light stopped after spreading to the erected shield wall. After a while, the dust blown up by the energy blocked the view of the camera. It was not until more than 10 minutes later that the dust gradually dissipated and the city center after the bombardment gradually appeared. The skyscrapers in the city center had disappeared, replaced by a huge shallow pit on the ground. The huge shallow pit spread to the shield and stopped expanding. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.